Hi, thanks for coming. This is a Board of Supervisors workshop. It's a special occasion because it's 6 o'clock at night. Just wanted to let everybody know just some housekeeping stuff before we start. We do have, as you can see on your screens, Microsoft Teams meeting happening as well. And I know that Luke Huggins is on there. Luke, and if anybody else is on, which I think is just Luke, if you want to talk at any point, you'll have to raise your hand. And then Joe is here. Joe with IT, Joe Hansen is here right over there. And he will let us know that you want to talk because otherwise we can't really tell. So the other thing is if you do want to talk, I do just ask that you come to the podium here, say your name. If you go up a couple of times, you just have to do it the first time. But I would ask that you say your name. If you're from any particular area, Badger, EMS, wherever you're from, you just say where you're from and then start your comment there. For that reason, we want to make sure that we're on the microphones and speak clearly into the microphones. Otherwise, the folks online will not be able to hear us. The microphones feed directly into the computer system. So if we're just kind of talking around here, they're not going to be able to hear what we have to say. So everybody cool with that? Awesome. So I will call this meeting to order. This is really, we wanted to get you all here so we could have a discussion about EMS, particularly the 28E agreements that we're going to be going into and how we're going to be dispersing the funding because the fine citizens of Webster County generously gave us the ability to levy for this reason. I don't know who wants to get started first on talking about the 28Es, but we have a couple of drafts going around. I think initially there was some conversation about getting a lump check, and there was some pushback on the Board of Supervisors about not having checks and balances. And so what we've done is we've tried to bridge the distance between here's your money, go have fun, and we're going to look at every single thing that you do. And so we're just trying to figure out where a happy medium is in regards to the distribution of funds and making sure that all of you get the money that the citizens pay in, the taxpayers pay in, and that also there is a certain level of oversight so that, you know, there's not any inconsistencies with what the funds are supposed to be used for versus what they're being used for. Does that make sense? Okay. I think at this time, we'll just open it up for discussion. If you want to come up or if anybody, yes, ma'am. Yes, you may. You go right ahead. Thank you. So you're like, just rip off the Band-Aid? No.
Actually up a proposal
Great.
which I've given to you. So to just introduce you, my name is Terry Town. I'm an EMT. I have been with Gary Ambulance for 30 years. I have been the director for 7, training officer for 1,000,000 years, it feels like some days. I've also been the Gary Fire Board treasurer for over 10 years. Professionally, I'm an accountant. I'm an owner and operator for 26 years. I do 1,200 plus tax returns, 75 bookkeeping, and you've got the range. I do everything, kind of. What I foresee is that essential service taxation money will be coming in September of 2025, so if not earlier. We need a coordinator hired to oversee the running of this essential service funds and assist the volunteer units to gear up for what we promised our communities that we serve that we would do. We need the funds to flow in uninhabited. Yes, I'm nervous.
These guys will tell you I say things wrong every time.
Everybody for the state volleyball tournament.
Yeah. So if that makes you feel better, I thanked the state volleyball tournament for happening a couple weeks ago. So don't feel bad.
Anyway, to have the funds to where they are allocated. Funds were the reason we as a service needed essential service. The communities we serve deserve to be able to have access to the reliable EMS. There also needs to be accountability. On page 2, this is the way I see it coming through. This is on the accounting side of it and how I see everything that we have done on our side. Taxation funds come in, they're put into a separate account. They should not be commingled with anything else that we have. Non-transporting services should receive their funds with an annual reporting to the coordinators. Coordinator is paid, which is the next, the reports, they report to the supervisors and the Essential Service Board. Salaries are also set by the supervisor and the Essential Service Board. Transporting ambulances such as Gowrie receive the funds that they are allocated to them. They will have quarterly reports to the coordinator. Accountability. Accountability is not just your concern, it's always been our concerns. And I'm not sure if you're aware that every volunteer unit in this county, plus Fort Dodge, except for one at this point, already has a board that governs them. Dayton does not at this point, but they are just about ready to pull the trigger on that. So we already have some accountability with that. Funds are received and put into a separate account. They are spent on the expenses that are identified as appropriate expenses by you, the supervisors, and the essential service. And those will come from the law that has been passed. Coordinator who orders is not the same person that pays the bills. There's your number one accountability. The board of the said agency, whether it's Gowrie or whoever, will give the quarterly updates to the financials. We'll get them. That's the number 2. So we are overseen by our board. Then the coordinator will also receive those financial reports. That's 3. The supervisors will view them. That's 4. And the Essential Service Board. That's 5 accountabilities. That's unheard of in the accounting world. That is a ton of accountability. So all the fears of what you're fearing, that there won't be accountability, I can tell you that there is going to be lots of accountability. They're going to go through a lot of hands, and it's going to go through very seamlessly, which is the way it should happen. If anything's deemed unacceptable, the funds must be transferred back into the account within 14 days of being deemed unacceptable. If there's a non-compliant in any EMS service to provide information, all funds will be put on hold until all funds are accounted for and approved by the supervisors. All EMS services will put runs into Image Trend to establish runs. So Image Trend is an accounting software, excuse me, it's not an accounting software. It's a software that we have to do for the state of Iowa. It is not just for transporting, but it's for non-transporting. The coordinator would have access to all of that. We can't allow you to have that information, obviously, because it has the personal information of runs and of things, but they would be able to see who is responding, who is not responding, and be able to hit your 70% goal that you're wanting. So that's how that accountability is. It's already in place. Non-transporting services already do this. The coordinator, number 1 criteria in my mind, needs to be someone who can talk with people. You can train anybody to be a paramedic. Well, okay, let me take that back. You can train people to be a paramedic. You can train them into business. You can train them in a lot of things. But if they're not a people person, you can't train that. That's just, it's got to be number 1. And since they're going to cover the largest county in the state of Iowa, they need to be able to talk to all of us. They have to be willing to take further education as needed, self-motivated. We'll do all the training in the county. That way we all get the same information. Right now I'm training Gowrie, but I don't go and train Dayton, and I certainly don't go train Fort Dodge. So this way we have uniformity, which is what we need from this coordinator. They're going to file all our insurance claims right now. We're outsourcing all of that, and they're taking some of our money. That way we can keep it in. Reports directly to the supervisors, the Essential Service Board, but also represents all of Webster County EMS. Willing to run on calls. I think this is a vital piece of the coordinator. They need to keep their skills up. How can they teach us? How can they oversee us if they have not been in the back of a rig in the last 5 years. They need to be able to make those runs and also to see what our challenges are. And you can't do that unless you're with us. We'll look and apply for funding sources as needed. They will be the contact person for our medical direct, help perform inspections, and keep everyone in compliance with the state of Iowa. They will also spend equal time in each transporting service building and have an office available to them. That way, they're not just in one place and nobody ever gets to see them. I think that's very important for the entire county. I don't know if this answers or helps with anything, but I believe this to be something that's very workable, very doable. Lines of communication haven't always been open or as open as they should have been, and that's also on us, because how many of you have been in the back of a rig? You guys don't know what we do. You don't know how we're set up. You don't, and how can you? So our lines of communication that to you have not been as well as they should have been also. So for that, we apologize for that, but we really want to move forward and we need to move forward as soon as possible. I'll give you a for instance. Gary wants to hire some paramedics, but we need a coordinator to kind of help us with that. And we don't have a coordinator, guys. So it's really vital that we get this going. So, do you have any questions?
First question I would have is, who are your recommendations on behalf of? Is it on behalf of Gallery or behalf of the Essential Services Board? Who are these recommendations? So who are you speaking on behalf of by making this? Is everybody on the board in agreement with this, is what I'm asking?
I have not presented this to the EMS Essential Service Board, so no.
Okay, I just want to know who you're speaking.
So originally, when the EMS Essential Board started, I was on that board and I did set budgets. And so a lot of this is, but mine were more numbers and less about the accountability side of it. I just assumed once we got past the numbers and got it voted in, that this would come with. And it seems like we're kind of stuck on some of that. So I just wanted to do that. Have I spoken to anybody in Webster County? EMS? Absolutely. And I think I have their backing pretty well.
Go ahead and go up, Dan, if you want, or unless Darren, you have more questions. And you gotta go to a microphone, pal.
Come on over here.
Well, the people
I can hear you.
on your microphone.
I know you love it. Dan Hansen,
I'm Dan Hansen, the director for Dayton,
thank you.
and I have been talking to Terry. This essentially, what she's put together is what we have all put together. That's my opinion, and I support what she presented today.
I have a question for you. Is this consistent with what you and the other folks were telling voters prior to the vote?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Darren, did you have other questions?
That was the main one. I just wanted to know who you were representing for purposes of the proposal. And some of this, I mean, before we tried the first draft of 2080, I showed up at one of the meetings and we talked about, okay, here's some of the things we want. It was still very rough because it was like, we wanted to set a first draft that would work for basically everybody and then come in for like the non-transports and do them one way and come in for an equation for the transportation services. And that was all to be determined after the first draft was done. And we got hung up on kind of the initial first draft that would apply to everybody. Some of the stuff that's in here, if this is now agreeable in terms of checks and balances, I don't speak for the supervisors. I'm just here to draft and try to kind of be a middle person, find out what your needs are, find out if that meets what they're looking for, because yours is a recommendation to them and they ultimately get the choice. And ultimately are responsible for how the dollars are spent when the auditor comes, and your individual entities are as well, of course. So there were concerns, for checks and balances and how things were going to get paid and making sure everything met that statutory criteria as went through. So that was the first draft, but some of this, at that meeting, I never remember talking about hiring a countywide coordinator. Maybe that's just other discussions that didn't have anything to do with 2080s. So some of this is new to me, that discussion point at least, but I think that's a lot of good ideas in this, obviously.
So I'm going to kind of go back and just some points that I wrote down. We have our Budget and Finance Director, Crystal Lloyd here, as well as former auditor Doreen Pliner, and obviously we have our current county auditor, Shauna Abrams, here as well. As far as when, if somebody, doesn't matter who, can speak on when the funds can be expected. I know we kind of had a little conversation prior to the meeting about when we can expect funds to come in and therefore when we can start distributing funds, that would be great. So whoever wants to. Matters up.
To my understanding, September is when we will start collecting. So we don't really have any funds right now to be giving out,
Okay.
my
And
understanding.
how much would that be? The full levy?
Well,
What is that?
no,
What does that
you-
look like?
You can't say that because as I was speaking with the treasurer, you know, she says not everybody pays their taxes.
Okay.
So we did talk about that in a couple of meetings with the former finance director. And she said, you know, you don't know for sure because lots of people don't pay their taxes. So that's where we're kind of on a stumbling block in a way.
If you want to come up, Doreen? Thank you, Sean.
Mhm.
Doreen Kleiner, former auditor. I guess when the taxes come in, they usually pay the first half of their taxes in September, but the funds aren't actually fully received until sometime in October. So one of my questions is, do we have a budget of any kind put together? How are you planning on spending the funds? Because in our accounting system, we need to have a budget to know what account to put that to. And I don't know how you want to receive information going forward. If you want to know by fire department what's been done or by product what's been done. You know, I don't know what all your terms are. You know, like how many stretchers did you purchase or how many supplies or, you know, what supplies in that. You know, so I don't know how you want that broke down as far as in our system or in the county system, because that'll make a difference. I did want to address one thing you said, if somebody bought something that wasn't approved, then they could repay it. Well, that's a big no-no with the state auditor. That throws up a real red flag. I would say that all invoices should be approved prior to the final purchase being made. And then they can send it to the auditor or to Crystal, the finance director, and she can make that payment right away, like within 2 weeks. So that would be my recommendation. So to keep us accountable, that way we have copies of all the documentation. We scan it all in, we keep it. And then when the auditor comes and pulls that trust fund, then we can show them, they can show them everything that they've got. So that way everything's documented. But I can't see just giving you money and having you spend it how you want, and then we don't get the receipts. That's a huge red flag to me. I would not approve of something like that. So I'd like to see it more go through our office, and it's just a matter of writing up a claim and maybe the coordinator approves it. Just somebody approve it and send it up to us. It can be faxed, it can be emailed. Like I said, it can be done every 2 weeks, but it should have some kind of approval. Basically, I would think that you would have a committee of X amount of people that would maybe be your small board, like Dylan has an EMS board, something along those lines that approve those claims every month or something, you know, and even if, but somebody's got to prove them before they get paid. And we're not trying to hold the money up. We're just saying it's got to be done in a manner that we can also be accountable in the end. So that's kind of what I was.
So you're not suggesting that all the claims come to the Board of Supervisors, but they come to some overarching
Yes.
entity that will look at all the claims and then say, yeah, go right ahead.
it.
And then, okay.
You want final approval because on claim day, you approve everything. You approve EMA and, you know, everybody's claims on that day, so you would see them. But, and then if you have questions, you can always go back, but the original approval would come from their board, whoever you want to have on it, you know, and then, like I said, one person, like a president or the head of it, the board would just sign off on it. And the claim sheets are simple. You know, you just put the information on them and attach the receipt, and then they can get entered. It's not a lot of work. It's just that it's to be accountable the way it should be. That's what needs to be done, because I never want to see somebody paying money back. That's a poor step, so.
So just to really dumb it down, that would be somebody going and buying a see? Can
Ordering.
never say it, defibrillator, and they bring the receipt in, and then we approve.
Yeah, well, what it would be, they'd have to order it. So
Order
they'd
first.
have to get, an order form, bring it to us. Well, bring it to the coordinator, get it approved, and then it gets sent to us or to the county. I keep saying us, I'm sorry. It would get sent to the county and then it would go through the system and be put through. And it would be paid within 2 weeks. So, I mean, if you're going to order supplies, you're ordering them online or whatever, then you just right away send the receipt in or get it approved, send the receipt in and it gets taken care of. It's pretty quick. But it's just like we do here in the county now. Anytime you want something, you order it, write up the claim for it, submit it, have department head sign off and submit it. So it's I think once you get into it, it wouldn't be too difficult once you learn the system, but.
And it wouldn't be every time. I
No.
mean, it'd be, I would think, my understanding, it would be like, not every claim cycle, there wouldn't be something in there because I don't think you probably order stuff every 2 weeks, right?
Just whenever you
Yeah.
have a payment, but it could
Right.
be 2 weeks before it gets paid because of.
Maybe in the beginning, but not,
And with your coordinator, if you're gonna do coordinator and benefits, who's providing the benefits? I mean, is the coordinator gonna be hired through the county and it'd be county benefits that they're getting, but it would be paid out of this fund, which could be done. That's like what we do with Dylan. Kind of that same, or do you pay your own? Yeah, it goes through us, but you pay it. You make the payment, yeah. So, I mean, you could do something like that. Funding wise, I don't know what you're trying to get in. Is it 1.5 million roughly? Is that what's coming in the first year estimated? Yep. 1.6. I would recommend doing 90% of that on your budget initially, because I mean, write the budget out for the full amount, but only allocate 90% in it initially so that not everybody pays their taxes. And if they don't pay it this year, they pay it next year and you catch up. But I don't want you to spend more money than you actually have. Does that make sense? So it's a matter of watching that fund and then, because somebody may put in for something in February that can't be paid for because you don't have enough money yet. You'll have to wait till after March. So those are things to be aware of because you don't have a fund built up. You're working off a zero basis right now. So those are kind of some things that need to be watched. But the big thing is getting a budget, put in and how you want to work that. And how you want the budget to look, what kind of reports you want back out of it. And you can talk with Crystal on that, how to create it. She's got that down. And then we can enter those accounts. It's already in a separate trust fund now. So that's already been done. So none of the funds are commingled with the rest of the county funds. It's in its own trust fund.
So I got two questions. You're probably.
Microphone. Oh, yeah, yes, you can.
Anyway, you're still up during. So Sean George, calendar fire. One question is, why is the EMS taxation being ran completely different than the fire taxation? I told you not to go.
Fire taxation runs through, it is the same pretty much, because fire taxation goes through the townships. And they're the same way. They collect. Now they do collect, the majority of it comes, I would say, in September, October, whenever the apportioning gets done. Because every month Brenda portions and spreads the money out to whoever gets it.
Mhm.
So same with the fire department. The first big one is going to be in September, maybe, start of September. Well, there'll be one in August that'll be done in September, and the big one will be done in October. So October, you'll probably have the majority of the funds, but then after that, people still come in and pay their taxes late. So every month you'll have a little bit of a trickle coming in until you get to March. Now, typically, I think we've seen about 60% of the taxes being paid, 60 to 65, I'd say, in September. Some people pay everything right away. So you get a little bit more of that first bump, but then the second bump will just be the difference of it, of whatever you're going to be getting. So.
Okay. So with the fire, our townships, well, our department, we're a benefit fire district, so
Yeah.
we're ran through our townships,
Right.
through a board
Right.
of throughout the 4 townships, city calendar. They hand us a check at the beginning of every year,
Who does?
the township, or from our fire board, from each representing member of our fire board.
They must have extra funds that they can do that. I don't know how they do that otherwise.
That's our
because
taxing dollars. It's
Well,
coming to
but-
us, so.
They must have some in there that they can give to you at the beginning of the year because they. don't
Well, I should say
collect
the beginning of
those.
the year, towards the first half of the year, when we have our board meetings.
Okay, so they probably collect the majority of it by then, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So
because-
when I want to spend any money towards fire hose and houses, anything like that,
Yeah.
I don't have to submit a receipt to come in and get that money. It's already given to us.
And
I guess that's where I'm asking why it's being treated differently.
I don't know how
Anyway.
that fire board works,
Yeah.
exactly, but they must have some surplus, like a slush fund in there. And then that's not been spending everything. Maybe they've got a little bit of a reserve so they can do that, pay you everything, and then they collect it again as it goes. Because the second half of taxes aren't paid until March. So that's when the rest of the money's. Yeah.
So that also, if I wanted to go buy, say, a Lucas device, last time I checked, $17,000.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to try to bank up 2 years worth of this taxation money to get that spent, to buy that. Doing it how you're proposing, how am I gonna get that taken care of? Without spending fire money and not being able to come in and submit a $17,000 because we're non-transporting, so we were promised the $10,000.
So you're promised X amount each year.
We were sold this whole
Okay.
idea that non-transport was $10,000.
Okay, so, and you need a $17,000 device, but you're only getting 10? Is that what you're saying?
Because it's medical equipment.
I see. because
So
it's a
if I was handed $10,000 this year,
Mhm.
I'd plan on buying it next year when that next installment comes.
So you put it in your, I see you don't.
We put it in
because you
the
haven't
account.
paid,
Mhm.
bought it,
So
purchased it.
not everything is just
Uh,
buying gauze and bandages and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Right.
it's just
I see
a
what you're
question
saying.
that the way you were proposing it's,
That's
kinda throwing-
something that maybe this year you're gonna be budgeted a little less. And that's gonna stay in the pot, and next year you get the full amount, so you can purchase it. Does that make sense? So whatever amount you were gonna spend on the Lucas this year, that would be less what the budget is. would be-
well, I'm just asking that if we got to turn in a receipt and if we're
Right,
only allotted
right.
10,000. How are you proposing that we're going to get to 7,000 or 17,000 without, or by doing it the way you're proposing?
Well, okay, so you're planning on purchasing a $17,000 piece of equipment.
I'm gonna make sure to keep close to the microphones.
So you're proposing you're gonna purchase $17,000 piece of equipment, but you only have 10,000 in your budget? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not
Or
saying
that you're allowed to have?
I'm not saying that's all we have right now. I mean, we
Okay.
have fire money. Right
No,
now.
no, I'm saying with the EMS.
The
Like-
EMS was $10,000 for non-transporting departments.
Okay, so $10,000 and you need 17, and you were gonna make the difference up with fire money then?
Or
You
wait
were
2 years,
Or wait 2 years to
Yeah.
do it?
however we do it. Or
Well, that's something you'd have to work out with the board that, maybe you don't get the 10,000 this year, but next year you get 17,000 or 20 allotted to you. And of that 20, you use up what you,
So it almost sounds like we got to come in here with a tin can begging for our little rations. It's kind of the way
say
we're
it like
supposed to
that.
go.
I'm just trying to keep it accountable too, but, yeah, and if you, I guess that money just needs to be held back, so next year you can purchase it. You need to make your budgeting aware that you're holding over this money for next year to purchase this extra amount. Does that,
It's an
so-
answer and it's,
yeah, I know.
I didn't expect to have a 100% answer that I was going to
Yeah.
like tonight. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, we all got to come up to some sort of solution.
But for the majority of the things, aren't you going to be purchasing as you go? I mean, are other people doing this when they're using it over 2 or 3 years?
I mean, we're not, I mean, what we'd do is we'd take that $10,000 and then we'd have to put fire money on top of that
And make
But-
the purchase
and make a purchase.
is what you're
But next year, can I take that 7,000 extra that we took out of fire, reimburse that back into the fire side?
or purchase something else the next year over the other 7,000.
But I'm also not going to go out and buy things just for the fact of buying things.
Okay, so if you're gonna go out and buy it for 10,000, the county pays, or 17,000, the county pays 10, you pay the 7. And then next year, you get an additional 7,000 to spend. Right?
No, it'd still be 10
Still
next year.
Part of that 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would only get 3,000 the second year budgeted, instead of the full 10. That's probably what it'd be an accounting thing, but yeah.
So, Dan again. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what he's getting at is the way the townships are set up, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Barry, that money comes in, the auditor gives the money to the town trustees. And then they distribute the money. That's how this was parallel to. Exactly the same. But yet, that's how this.
That's how we're.
That's how this was all set up, and that's how we were gonna do this. So I don't understand why we have to do all these other hoops. And we've done this for decades with the townships. I went through that book frontwards and backwards. Now, you had asked about budgets. The 3 transport services submitted a budget, and in that budget is a general fund. Doesn't the general fund work as we get to spend that money in the general fund? We don't go outside those parameters. And if we do, we have to come here and ask permission to go outside those parameters to spend that money. How does your general fund work? So that would be miscellaneous things that I can't wait 2 weeks to get permission to buy a defibrillator. There's things this is a little different, guys. This is EMS. Things need to be bought. Like I work a car accident, 2:30 in the morning, defibrillator gets ran over. I need it overnighted. I don't need to wait 2 weeks from you guys to be able to purchase that.
How would you purchase it?
We'll have to overnight it. And
And then how would you pay for it?
I don't have the funds to pay for it.
Okay, but
You know, credit card or?
No, because that's the problem. A lot of our transport services don't have the money to buy things ahead of time. We need that money in our general fund.
I'm just saying the way the departments do it is like, I have the county credit card, so I may spend $3,000 on whatever in a month. And then I submit my claims and then I get that $3,000 approved by these guys. I've already bought it and received it before they ever see my claim.
Right.
So I buy it when I need it and I get it 2 days later, and then they approve the claims on a 2-week basis.
So you're saying you can go ahead and buy things out of that general fund without the permission?
No.
That's what he just did.
Well, are you saying?
In the budget.
Within the budget, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
My funds have already been budgeted.
How much is a defibrillator?
Okay, hey, we gotta one person at a time. I know everybody's all
On an
murmur.
accounting Service side of things, guys, that is a complete nightmare to put something on your personal credit card and get
That personal.
reimbursed. That's the quickest way for fraud to happen. So, well, and it would have to be because most of us, especially the non-transporting, they don't have those funds.
And I was just explaining how the county departments do it. We have a county issued credit card.
But when you
But we
order
don't.
it, you order it and you don't, do you give them a check? Do you give them a credit card? I mean, if we didn't have this, how would you do it? Or the funds are in your account, how would you pay them?
well,
They would send you an invoice.
right.
Same thing.
Again, why can't we use all of that general fund without, and again, why are we doing this different than we do the townships? I have yet to get an answer for that.
Okay, the townships have their own trustees and they have their own budgets that they file every year with the state. That's how it's different. You don't file a budget.
We would.
Will you file a budget?
Yeah,
Well, could, but
we submitted a budget to the supervisor.
Okay, but did they do a state? It was an online thing, so you had to go online and fill out an.
So I think one of the big thing, and we've talked about it before, so like when we look at our fund balance for EMS right now, we have a singular item that just says EMS. And that, I think one of the biggest downfalls we have, so we created the budget when we got into the discussions, getting our EMS commission set up, we put down a budget, an Excel sheet, put it on a white piece of paper. What we need right now is we need to figure out what account balances, what accounts we're going to have, where they're going to go. So in other words, like non-transporting services, we'll have a line item in our county budget that's X number of dollars, however we want to break that out for non-transport services. So we would have a budget put together because this is all the county money coming in. So we have to set up our budget through that. So we would say, hey, we've got $10,000 going to these. We've got 10 non-transporting agencies. So we're going to put 100,000 in that account. We're going to allot so much for supplies. We're going to look, budget for what we plan to do for buildings. And so I think one of the biggest things that we need to really get drafted down on is getting all of that put into accounts, like working with Crystal and getting that actual budget line itemed out. Because until we have that, we just have one line in our county budget and it's going to eventually contain 1 point whatever, 1.5, 1.6. And that's all it's going to say is EMS 1.6 million. And we can't operate that way. We need to know where we have to be accountable to where all those dollars go. So to your guys' point, if we have a coordinator, they would sit down with Crystal, they would sit down with all of the agencies and put together that detailed budget of this is what this needs to look like going forward. Because to your point, like one of the agencies I talked to, they said, I may only spend 5,000 this year. So I'm going to look at what I'm going to realistically need for EMS because I'm non-transporting. I don't expect to buy a Lucas. I'm not expecting this. So maybe I'm going to only budget 5 and we'll kind of leave it at that. Then that way, if we know we are going to need certain equipment somewhere else, we can shift that money around. But what we don't have is we just have the budget on the Excel sheet. We have to get that into our county system into Tyler so that we actually approve what this budget looks like. And I think that's part of where the hang up is we hit may call it 10,000 foot when we set up this first budget to get this passed. What we need now is to drill down into what the county actually has to have in order to be compliant with the state and get our budgets in and approved and be accountable to all those dollars. And really, until we do that, it's hard to do anything because I just have one line item that says EMS.
My name is Dan Hansen from the Southwest Webster, the Southwest quadrant of the county. And my position on the essential services is to cover that territory, which Terry Town has been the past director, but she's been involved with EMS all along, and we support all that she's done and what we're proposing on doing. But originally, this essential services was to make sure that everybody in the county got EMS as quickly as possible. And the supervisors selected a committee that I'm on to come up with the best way possible to do that, to get the response times down, to get the areas we already have first responders or transport services. Part of this goes to Farmville Fire and Rescue. Another part goes to Stratford because they actually cover parts of Webster County. So that's where, and we were basically going off the way the firemen have been doing it for a while, because our service gets property tax money from the 4 townships, Gary, Clay, Roland, and Lost Grove, and then from the cities that we cover, which is Gary, Callender, and Harcourt. So we get property tax money to help with the EMS. Now that this is passed, those fire budgets or those city budgets do not have to take out of what could go to fire and they put it in the EMS budget. It doesn't have to be, because this money is passed. And when we promoted this, we had our first draft out. We had a website, we had it all over the place. So if anybody had any questions with it, and we're up and coming, we've got a lot of volunteer services where in Webster County, there's a lot of departments that are staff, their career, they're different. They're more like a fire budget that we have, because we have volunteer services that we're trying to keep going. We're trying to do that. And so when we established this and came up with all these different ideas and directions, which would be best to get the response time down to everybody in the county, I shouldn't say the word assumed, but we thought it would work like the fire budget, where the calendar first responder, there's 10 different first responder units that aren't transport in the county. And they want to look ahead to improve. This is all about improving EMS. It's not taking into an existing facility and putting money into it. We're upstarting and really trying to uplift all these first responder units within the cities, different towns, with the fire departments, and then the transport services we have, including Stratford and Farmville. So we thought it was going to be a lot simpler than what it is, because we've got a lot of, well, Dalton came through with the GIS, which shows the breakdown, which really was helpful. So we know which districts get which money. And then when we worked with Mr. Driscoll and making sure the 28Es and making sure that these funds, which we were thinking were going to go, whatever was raised from different territories, that money was going to go in their account. And it'd be a separate ledger with a separate tracking system to make sure, because there's a 422D that we get from the state, that only this monies can go these places. And so between the accountability, I understand that. I understand that, and accountability is huge for every department. And at the same time, if we're bringing in Farmville and Stratford and all that, we've got a lot of volunteers we're working with. We don't have paid staff to take care of the book work not the book work. We're going to have the book work. We're going to have the line items for everything that lines up to the 422D. We've got, as Terry explained, all these different check levels to make sure that the monies that are in this account for this territory, whether it's semi-annually, that's semi-annually. But at the same time, that those monies would be able to be spent. Now, Sean was talking about an item that they were hoping to get, but see, with each individual first responders unit gets 10,000 a year sitting in their account. And if they see something down the road that they need, well, they know for EMS that they have to wait a couple of years to get that. And then their monies will be there. We're not going to have fun with it. This isn't a fun money fund. Not at all. This is strict, important EMS life-saving information or monies that we're using here. And I've been on the committee with some other members that are here, and we've looked at all these things, and we thought that this was the way it was going to go to improve first EMS service to all with all kinds of opportunities. Anyway, I got a lot of things to talk about, but I know there's more other people that to it, but I was hoping we could make it so it's not so complicated. It's still legal, still a way to do things, checks and balances involved, but at the same time, those monies could be building up in each, whether it's first responders area, where they can use it for training some of their firefighters. Maybe they want to go. So some of this stuff, yes, there will be receipts for the money. For the money will be there. The receipts will match, and you can do all the accounting you want to do. But it's not like a normal department in the Webster County Courthouse, because we're working with a lot of volunteers, and we want to keep it that way, because that's the way we figured we could best cover the whole county, is with the volunteers that we already have, and trying to, according to the 422D, item 6, it has a whole listing. I mean, it's right there, what we can spend it on and what we can't. And no first responders are going to jeopardize that, because we're going to be watching that. And that county coordinator, administrator that we're really from the very beginning needing to coordinate and communicate with all the first responders units, with the transport services, but Terry already talked about all the communication, all the things that needs to be. Now, I don't know for sure what, if anything's going to be decided tonight, or this is just a round table to hear what other areas are thinking, but I'm kind of thinking from our Essential Services Committee with Fort Dodge Fire and Southwest Webster and Dayton Rescue was the main 3 transports. They assist us on the other sides, but that monies, we promoted that. As you all know, the issue passed overwhelmingly, and that was because of a lot of the information that we were telling them that the first responders were going to have, and what each territory was going to be able to. Monies weren't going to be going from Southwest Webster up to Fort Dodge, or from Fort Dodge to Dayton. They were all going to be used within, and that's what Dalton came up with. And that's whether, well, anyway,
The other part of that, though, Dan, And section 422D also states that it has to be put to an agency trust fund. So it's not going into somebody's account, it's going to an agency trust fund that's maintained by the county. So when that happens, you're talking a different ballgame.
Correct, but on a trust fund, Doreen, explain that to me. Why
made
couldn't that
different.
trust fund just be distributed to Southwest Webster's bank account or Dayton Rescue or Calendar Fire Department with the tag? It's gotta go with it's gotta be EMS qualified.
Okay, and where's my proof?
We'll have it for you.
Well,
And when it's spent, we'll have the receipts, we'll have the bills. No more money is gonna be moved. And it's not gonna be commingled with our daily or with their daily. It's gonna be whatever. And I mean, that's what accounting does.
All right,
Maureen?
Could I ask a quick question? Did you
Yes,
say
John.
that you have set this up so that you propose to set this up in such a way that the tax money from the township stays in that township?
But I didn't want to confuse the thing, because right
Is
now,
that what he's proposing, is that we treat it like it is one? Is that what? What he is proposing is that it be based on the tax base of each township rather than,
distribution,
correct. And if,
regardless of it not being a township issue. or whatever.
My district.
but along with the fire, those township, and I didn't want to confuse, I suppose I did, anybody on that, but the monies that have supported Southwest Webster Ambulance Service help support for a long time has been they've taken from their fire budget to put in the EMS. So now in the future, they don't need to take from their fire to put in the EMS. That'll all stay in their fire budget to use with the fire departments that serve that area. So sorry for the confusion there, John.
Proposing giving everybody X amount of dollars, but there's no documentation to back up where that money went until maybe 2 years later.
Oh,
or 3
no.
years later.
Oh, no, we're looking at, you can have quarterly audits, we can have semi-annual audits, we can have,
Okay,
the
but they're gonna
coordinator is,
hold some-
well, we
right.
were,
so I've got another question. Now that you've mentioned that you're perfectly fine with quarterly audits or things like that, I've seen two separate proposals for 2080s. Both of them are asking for annual audits. What is the thought process from those proposing an annual audit as to why it should be annual and not, say, quarterly?
well, I would think you'd be able to do it flexibly. First off, to put people's mind to ease that, oh yeah, this, you want the accountability, so do we.
Mhm.
And if we want to set it up to have a quarterly, I mean, it's not going to be that difficult. The monies will be right there and they'll have specific place to go with it. And at any time, whether it's quarterly, semi-annually or annually, if you want to start with a semi-annual, it'll be a lot less challenging if it's possible to do that, other than having more paperwork to need certain things. And then, I don't understand. Well, anyway, I think people smarter than me can figure some of this stuff out. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth in.
10,000, well, 1.5 million, say they get $100,000 allocated to them each year. And
Yeah.
you're saying then they can spend it how they want to, correct?
No, according to the 422D.
I mean, according to 422D.
It's all
yes.
got to be EMS. It can't be fire, it can't be
Right.
fire.
Okay.
Whatever relates to EMS,
Right.
they can spend it on, or if they want to just hold it and build it up because they got a crash cart or they got something that they're trying to do for the first responders or equipment that they need for the first responders
So now,
or training.
what I'm saying is that you're not making any interest off the money that's not being used, and it isn't going back into the fund. That's one of the things about those funds is that you collect interest off any of the funds that aren't being used, for that month.
Well, see, that has,
Monthly, she does interest. So,
yeah, we haven't.
so
we
if you
had-
haven't allocated it out, you're going to be collecting interest on those and you're going to be making more money in the long run.
Well, if you
But if
can,
you allocate it all out, At the end of the year, it's all gone.
If you can accountably take to know that Dayton Rescue or Fort Dodge Fire has this much coming to them. I don't want, well, they need something over here, so we're gonna take from here this account money that's not basically this property tax owners and give to them. How do you do that? Keep from doing that?
Well,
Because we promoted this for all these rural areas, even for the cities, that the money's raised in those particular townships that are served by certain transports or first responders. That money will be there to use to help them get EMS care as quickly as possible.
right, right. I get
So,
it.
but there's a big difference between that account and a trust fund. So why,
I'm just saying you're not gonna get any interest off of those funds if you keep putting the money. If you spend everything every year and it sits in somebody's checking account, the EMS checking account, and there's no interest accumulated.
but if you'd see Doreen, if you'd see our budgets, basically what Southwest Webster is getting between the building and wages for hopefully some paid, there isn't gonna be sitting in that account, monies. It's gonna be going right back out to items in the 422D that match up, not commingled with the daytime stuff, but there be checks and balances to make sure whoever's writing the checks knows that that's what it goes for. So in the services, now I don't know about the first responders units that well, but on the transports, there's, and it hasn't been filed with the state. We just put what we anticipated because a lot of this is prior to being able to do anything. It's not like we have been established volunteer services for a long time. But what this money will be able to do, we're really hoping that it's going to bring better EMS service throughout the entire county. And Fort Dodge's part that they go will even help as they begin to be able to use the monies that they've been promised. Well, I can't say that either because it's proposed, allocated, allocated
Budgeted, yeah.
or budgeted so that they use that. So Doreen, the only thing I can see that maybe in the first responders that as they're getting their EMT or EMS side of their first, that maybe some of that will be there, but maybe they can put it in an account that would individual trust funds for these individual.
Yeah.
That's a good
Do
question.
you have something, Crystal? Oh.
Thank you.
You know, and maybe it's such a point that they put together a budget for the first quarter. This is what we're gonna need. And then that's what they're allocating. You know, and their budgets say 100,000, but they're only gonna get, maybe they're gonna take 30,000. And the next quarter, maybe they take 40,000.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't know about Dayton and I don't know about Fort Dodge, but I think whatever we get allocated from that area that those property tax money comes from is going to be used.
Okay.
Unless a part of that can say, hey, in 3 years, we're going to be working on a new ambulance. So then that monies will be set aside. We won't wait, we'll already be setting that for what we haven't spent because basically it's the first responders that get 10, but the bulk of it goes to Fort Dodge, to Dayton and to, Southwest Webster and Gary.
Beneficial, Shauna, to talk to another county. I know Eagle Grove has it, Big Pocahontas.
Some of those counties that have passed that though.
And
Of those funds.
I know.
And so that's a disadvantage where we have that advantage. Well, I don't know if,
How do they take tax dollars and what private entity in charge of that?
What's that?
How do they take tax dollars and what a private entity like a hospital in charge of that?
Well, I'm not sure.
I think those are county-owned hospitals. I think Cassuth,
yes,
Pocahontas and Humboldt all have, that's where they're at.
before March, I know Dina and I had talked to Christine a bit about, sorry. Before, when Dina was still here, we had talked to Cassuth County a little bit more and they were eager to help and answer questions. So maybe we should reach back out.
I reviewed their 2080 agreements too as well, but it was not applicable necessarily. Some of the terms and conditions that they wanted were applicable, but the fact that it was a separate entity and not what we have here was a medical facility. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. But I don't remember which, if it was Cassuth or which county it was, but that was one of the 2080 agreements I was looking at, not trying to reinvent the wheel, but when Matt and I met and kind of sat down and talked about stuff, we had 2 or 3 different entities that we kind of tried to work together for that first draft, or at least to get some of the major verbiage and concepts out of that.
That was going to be my question, if there's examples already, so we're not reinventing.
There
the
are,
wheel.
I guess I don't know, and I'd have to defer to the experts as to whether there's any other that are kind of like, more like us.
Right.
I don't know, with so many small, rural, and then, one big center and a couple other medium-sized centers. But I don't think that the formula and the idea that this group came up matched necessarily what anybody else was doing.
I do know that at my last summer school, there were several auditors that we tried to get together because they were asking what we were doing and I was asking what they were doing and everybody was still like, we don't know.
It is still new. I mean, we're at the
Yeah.
bleeding edge of trying to figure this out, but I don't-
Exactly. Whole lot of moving parts.
For having potentially funds and, coming in a couple of months. So there's still a lot of work to do, even though there were concepts, we still need to make sure we can fit everything in, through the regulations and get, obviously Doreen has spoken about some things that she thinks absolutely have to happen for audit purposes. The first draft was looser than what Doreen was talking about. We talked about doing quarterly reconciliations that the board would look at as kind of a compromise, because there was pushback that it's just not practical from these guys' perspectives from the Essential Services Board. That just wouldn't be practical to do the invoice every 2 weeks system. So we kind of compromised on what we thought might work. And that's where, I know the auditor doesn't like it, but that's why I put back, they review them on a quarterly basis. And if there was something found inappropriate, we would immediately have some, clawback provisions. I know that's less than ideal, but we were trying to kind of balance the interests of letting them function and having a little bit of flexibility. And by saying we, there's not even, as last time I checked, there wasn't even unanimity among the Board of Supervisors. There's some people who want it more clamped down and some people who are saying we need accountability, but not, the invoice-based accountability. So I'm happy to try to be an in-between and work and draft whatever everybody thinks will be agreeable, as long as I think it complies with the statute. But there's a whole lot of decisions to be made between now and when the money starts to flow, which is problematic.
Which is exactly why we're here.
Exactly.
Right.
Try to hammer these things out.
So my question is everybody on agreement to have a director or a person in charge, or is there some that are not?
That'll take at least, close to 10%.
Right. And then
Salary and benefits.
my next question was, where are they housed at? Are they housed here? Are they housed at the city? I mean,
Logistics, I don't know. I guess at this point, I'm more worried about the funding, that it'd probably have to come off the top before you look at anything else.
right, right.
And then go to your formula. But I hadn't heard that. Maybe there's been discussions. I haven't been to all the meetings, certainly, but that was like, I didn't know we were going to hire a director.
So that director would split between 4 buildings. They would split so much time in each building, and then that's what their job duties. And then they would actually be an EMT or paramedic, and they'd go on runs while they're in that building. If something comes up, they could go on a run. Thus, to Terry's point, they stay focused. Has anybody reached out to Hamilton County? They passed this 2 years ago.
I haven't talked to Mary. I was gonna call one of the supervisors. I know they haven't had a chance to talk to her yet.
Not to jump the gun too much, but where do we go from here?
I got one more question before I
yeah,
go on to
yeah.
that. You're talking about doing.
Stand up and get closer. Sean.
I'm just as close as everybody else is.
Sean, come on.
Acting like a typical city employee.
I'm just as close. Take it with me.
Says the former city
So-
employee.
Now you threw me off.
I'm still saying,
Everybody's talking about the 2-week billing cycle, payments and all that stuff. Like, what's that gonna do for added workload within that department? I mean, is this money eventually gonna trickle down into where we're gonna pay a county employee to sit in your office? Because that's EMS based payments that were going out, or, I mean, I'm just kind of looking into the future, knowing how government runs, like, that's where I'm seeing this thing going.
Well, I guess my thought is, like we said earlier, yeah, it'll probably be a little bit more of a load in the beginning, but not every pay cycle is gonna have something all the time. I mean, that's,
But we can't guarantee that. I mean, Fort Dodge, I know they go through resources way more than all the rest of us. I mean, I can only imagine the amount of invoices Matt's gonna be turning in, or Terry, or whoever. So it's gonna be quite the workload dumped on you guys. And like I say, I'm seeing this kind of trickling into where additional workload is dumped on you, additional staffing is needed. Oh, we got EMS money, where one of the supervisors already said, if we got extra money here, we can pull it from here to go to this and to do this and that.
I mean, I guess, do you think that it would be, I mean, every 2 weeks? I mean, that's, to me, that's, a lot of invoices. But I mean, do you really think you're gonna have, let's for say, toilet paper on one, and then, something that, you're not gonna,
Stuff like that happening, but
but I mean, it's not gonna be single stuff every single time. I mean, like the other departments, I'll give you, for instance, like the sheriff's department, they try and get all their stuff together on a claim. It's not all just single stuff. So I mean, they try, and like, even like Darren, he tries and puts everything together on one claim, this and this. And so it isn't something he has claims every other week, but it's not.
so if I go and buy 20 different things from 20 different vendors, I can turn in one invoice to you
But
and that's covered.
my question is, are you going to do that though? Are you going to buy 20 different items?
I'm
each
just
time?
asking the questions because there seems to be a lot of other what ifs here.
Right. Okay, let's say we have a director. They're going to be the one turning in the claims, correct?
Yeah, that's probably go.
Okay.
But I've heard 3 other different options on here tonight too. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm just kind of,
I mean, I guess
asking
that's
that
where we need to find out, because, that director will be the one turning in the claims. And I guess my thought is, and I mean, I know you were here for a long time. I guess I see the claims come through, and it isn't that person, there isn't, I don't think it'll be that much of load on there, because it's not going to be something separate every single paper or every claim period.
so if we have a director and we have a central equipment location, I mean, we can buy, say, gauze in bulk. We're gonna buy that, take it out of this place. How's that gonna be billed out to?
Well, then they're going to be, okay, if it's your area, I mean, you're going to have your own claims, your area.
But if
And
we
then-
can buy it in bulk throughout the entire, for all the agencies,
We
I can buy
talked
one
about
box
doing-
of it for,
we talked about doing that even on a county level. We had some thoughts about like copy paper. Everyone uses copy paper, and if you buy it, maybe you can buy a truckload cheaper than you can buy
In bulk,
10 boxes at a
correct.
time for manual. So, I mean, if you did something like that, you probably, county attorney has X dollars for office supplies. I'd say, oh yeah, I now need 10 boxes, and the cut rate we got it at, I'll now take it at that rate, and I'll tell them that I've now purchased that from the bulk supply that we pooled our resources for, or
okay, so how's that gonna work EMS wise? Am I
that's
gonna have to
something
do
you'd have to
that?
be creative if you want to do that for cost savings, but I don't see why you couldn't do that with those dollars. Yeah. Yeah.
And to the direct,
So right now, what happens if I use said defibrillator pads? We use it on a call. Gowrie will hand us a set before we leave. That way we're set back up. So do I have to write a check to Gowrie? Gowrie has to write a check to you, or submit that claim to you and then bring it back that way? How's that billing portion of that gonna work? So we're not out of
Gotta
service,
replace
so
what
we can
they've
still
used.
provide it. If we have another call the next day, like happened a month ago, we could go on the second call.
Usually they take them off the ambulance and the ambulance gets reimbursed back for it and even charges the insurance company, which from the sounds of it isn't doing a real good job of reimbursements here lately. So they can rotate off the ambulances, or we can have a central area where they can have whatever bandages, pads, whatever they need, but we can buy that in bulk also.
So I guess that really wasn't a question on wanting an answer. That was more pointing out the situation we're gonna have, because it happens all the time. Yeah,
and I mean, and like, sorry. I mean, I like agree with Darren. If there could be maybe like a central place, you know, where we could house everything, it's gonna be easier because like Bob said, you're not, or you're gonna run out of this. Well, we know we're gonna need this, so we're gonna buy it in bulk. I mean, well, we would just have to have somebody run to that central place to get it. And then, of course, that director, let's say, will be keeping track of all this. I mean, I'm sure that they'll have a spreadsheet of some sort to, and then like if they can be the one to order everything.
Right. So the director part is, I guess, is where I was kind of leading into that's one person that could track all this.
Yes.
Otherwise, you guys are all doing that.
And I guess
I really highly doubt any of you are doing this.
I'm a believer in having somebody over all of this because we're all just, it just kind of gets to be, oh, so-and-so's doing that, so-and-so's doing that. I think it needs to be one person.
A lot more moving parts than what people
Yes.
involved in the service. know.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, because we up here don't want all these invoices coming in from you, and you, because we have to account for everything too, because we also get audited.
right, right. And then, unless anybody else has anything on that, I got another topic I'm gonna move on to. But if anybody else wants to go on it, I'll wait and I'll come back up. I got it wrote down.
To your answer your question, I think there is going to be a lot more work. I mean, already there's been a lot more work. So we'll just have to adapt to that as it comes and
And really, I want to make a comment too. Like, I'm kind of disappointed that this is all coming down now, rather than like the last 2 years when we've been working on this. I mean, I know that there's been faces that changed up here, but like, it just kind of like now we're at crunch time and plans changed. You know, just because you got a couple different players in the game doesn't mean like the whole game has to change on there. But you were talking about the 2080 agreements. So I'm the chief in calendar. I've talked to 0 people about any 2080 agreements.
Are you on the Essential Services Board?
On the board?
Advisory council.
Committee?
Not on the advisory.
That's who's been working on it. What their proposal was going to be to the Webster County Supervisors as to what these form agreements should look like. So we did a first draft, still in draft form, but each individual community has to have a separate agreement.
Okay.
So there was none negotiated specifically or recommended specifically what the terms are for anybody. We just tried to do one that will fit everybody and could be modifiable, whether you're transport, non-transport, and put in the equation that's to be calculated for distribution of funds. And then that was going to be then recommended as kind of a template to go off for the Board of
Oh,
Supervisors.
hold on one second on that. You just said for the formula for distributing funds.
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like there was a plan in place,
To come up with.
right? Not just,
That's
you
the,
have to send in receipts and all that. Is the way you just said that.
that's what EMS was asking me, the EMS, Essential Services Board rather, is asking me to put together. It's between me and Essential Services when I went to their meeting. So I tried to draft up what their proposal was going to be to the Webster County Supervisors.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a place for a formula for the transport services.
So the formula was most likely based on the taxation coming in from a certain area.
Assuming it, and that was
Okay.
above my pay grade, just there was going to be a formula for the transport service.
So it's not above your pay grade because
I'm
you're the
not,
county attorney.
I'm not,
And you are supposed to be reporting that to everybody sitting up here.
well, not until they had a proposal. I was trying to help them.
I don't think it'd be, if I was your boss, I wouldn't be waiting for the final proposal.
About what they were.
I would be waiting for as your talks throughout the whole way. And I think after talking to some of the supervisors, it kind of feels like they were thinking the same way. So,
That's fine, but they asked, the Essential Services folks asked me to come to their board meeting a couple months ago.
Okay.
And asked me to work on a draft. So a couple months ago, they gave me their ideas, put together a draft, gave it back to them for their meeting. And that's where we first got, okay, there's a lot of discord between what the supervisors had told me they'd wanted and what these guys wanted. So Nikki was the only supervisor I sent it to because she'd been attending. Nikki is the chair, got a copy of the first draft when I sent it to Essential Services before their next meeting, whenever that was, a few months back. And there was kind of then the city of Fort Dodge went through it and sent back feedback that I knew was not going to fly with the supervisors in terms of, less accountability in terms of what they wanted, kind of, just basically some of it was just give us the funds and we'll figure it out. And we don't need doing quarterly reconciliations and things like that. And I knew that. That's why we're kind of in a workshop now, because the structure that at least the city of Fort Dodge's feedback was from their city manager was at odds with what a lot of this board needed for accountability. So we're here to try to bridge that gap, figure out problem solving. But yeah, I was in that capacity. I not only represent the board of supervisors, but I represent every little committee that's got a county committee. So I was advising them on that. They asked me to draft a document for them so they could propose it. I didn't even know that first draft was going to be what they ultimately want to advise the supervisors on. So it's a little jumping the gun to give the supervisors the first draft of something when I don't even know that's how it's going to end up. They're just a jumping off point. And then they're going to have more meetings, fine tune it. Be like, oh, is this what you want to recommend? Yes. Okay, then we go to the supervisors with it. That's what the code says they're supposed to do. Make recommendations to the board. I was helping them craft that.
What is the figures?
Just in case folks in here don't know, the coordinator, that money is coming from the essential service fund. It's not, okay, so that's off the top. That was how we put that together, just in case somebody doesn't know that, so.
You gentlemen, no, you go, no, you go.
Right, I'm Ryan Bogue. I'm the fire chief for Harcourt. We're a non-transport service, and my perspective is strictly driven from that. Everybody, I think's brought up some really good points on concerns, what they want to see. So I'm just going to go over like what I would view in a 2080 agreement. First of all, I think Dan Hansen was absolutely correct when he said like we have to have a general fund. He calls it that. I would call it a EMS consumables on a line item budget. We have to have those funds to work off of. We can't ask for permission to spend that money and then wait to get reimbursed. The reason for that, in my eyes, is essential service is supposed to offset all the funds we currently use from our fire budgets for us that run fire calls too. If I have to buy something, let's say off Amazon, we do buy stuff off Amazon. I can't charge it to that. I have to pay for that ahead of time. So if I buy something off there and then I have to submit for 2 weeks to wait to get paid for that, if you guys decline that for some reason, my fire funds have to cover that. That's the opposite of what essential service was supposed to do. So we do need access to those funds ahead of time. What I would propose and what I would be comfortable with is I have no problem submitting a budget to a committee, whoever it is, ahead of time that says this is what every dollar the EMS funds go to is going to go to. And then be audited at the end of the year or biannually, however you guys want to do that. I can keep all the receipts for that. But that's what I would like to see. I actually played around with a little budget that kind of broke down everything. So in that budget, I had vehicle expenses, utilities, stipends for our volunteers, work comp insurance. If I break that down to kind of a ratio on what we run for EMS calls, was about 75%. 75% of that, of those costs, it came out to be right about that 10,000. So we're not getting extra funds from this. That is EMS's fair share in my costs. So as far as fraud or saving money to use for things that you guys don't know about, that's probably not going to happen. I don't know what Sean's budget looks like. Probably similar, but we're not going to have those extra funds. But we do need to offset what we've been paying for fire, what fire has covered for the last forever. So that's my 2 cents on how the budgeting should work. I have no problem doing that. So other than that, when it comes to 2080 agreements, as Sean's kind of hinted to, all of us are set up differently. There's 2 benefited fire districts in this county that run fire and EMS calls. Before you guys start writing 2080 agreements or get the specifics down, we got to discuss who the actual agency that's going to be held accountable is. So
The concept that I was pitched to me is there'll be individual 2080 agreements with each of those. What are there, like 4 transport and 8 non or something like that? So there'd be 12 different 2080 agreements. And it was just kind of what are the general constructs was that first draft of what would apply to everything. Some of the $10,000 concept, I think there are 8 of those, and then the rest were going to be in a formula that I hadn't been provided that would be plugged in. But basically what the 2080 all it was here's going to be kind of the basic procedure for getting your money and showing the county that you spend it on something that falls under those subsections in 422D. Here, that was the basic attempt at the first. That was it, very high level. And we didn't get past the first high level because there were questions on how much, whether the quarterly reconciliations with the Board of Supervisors was too much. That was one of the major points. And Then there are questions about if it's county overseen funds being used to purchase a building, who's going to own the building? Is the county going to own the building? Is the fire or the EMS area going to own the building at 2080 or is the city going to own the building? There are all kinds of questions. I kind of thought those would have to be on a case by case basis with some sort of clawbacks. The county's concern being if these funds are used to help build a fire station in Gowrie or something, or a EMS building in Gowrie. Oh, 10 years down the road, they discontinue service. Okay, well now all those monies that are supposed to be for EMS, you can't just sell that building and have the city get involved. So we were trying to figure out how to balance those. So I was thinking on a case by case basis, when those sorts of big projects were coming up, probably have to have some individual agreements about that before we just blanket pay for things like that with those funds. So there's a whole lot of little ripples to think about. The $10,000 flat, as long as you're meeting one of these criteria, is a little different, I think. It's a little simpler perhaps than the places that might be building facilities. But those were just some of the first very basic level things in the first draft. We didn't get to a second draft yet. That's why we're here talking, because there were so many things on both sides that we hit an impasse. We need to talk about those things. I think we're getting some good feedback here as to what we need from both sides. I don't know that we have agreement, but we certainly are getting, what are our needs and what are the needs from an accounting perspective and an audit perspective. But that's what we're, at least in my view, that's what we've been trying to do since we started that meeting that I attended a couple months back. So
I
Aaron?
wanted,
Did I hear you say you don't have a copy of the formula right now that they're using?
I didn't have that. I didn't plug it in as to what the formula was, and I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I think it has, it's based on GIS or.
While he's handing these out, I don't necessarily think this needs to be said, but it kind of does. And I've said this, I sit both on the Board of Supervisors and also the EMS Advisory Council. And when it was first passed and we started to have these discussions like, yay. I know it was contentious when we brought up checks and balances, and it's not at all that there is an absence of trust in any of you personally or your organizations. But the thought is thinking future wise, thinking how do we build this from the ground up to make sure that it's sustainable in the future. Like Darren talked about buildings, what happened, the problem is what happens when what happens for this? And we have to make sure that we have the building blocks set now, so that 10 years down the line, when none of us are on this board anymore, and, presumably, the people who sit in these seats can make sure that we knew what we were talking about and they understand what we were going with. And then also, the checks and balances, whether it's 2 weeks, whether it's 3 months, whatever the timeline is to protect the county, to protect the taxpayer money, and also to protect all of your organizations as well. Terry had a great point that she said you have this many checks and balances and this many eyes on it, which may seem excessive, but really those are put in place to protect the money and to protect all of our, for lack of a better term, all of our asses. And for those people in the future. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that it's not like anyone on this side of the dais is saying, you're going to spend the money crappy, it's just trying to figure out the best way to take the taxpayer funds and distribute it to everyone in accordance with what we told the voters and what they voted on, in the most streamlined way, which, as we all know, is very difficult in government. So I just wanted to get that out there to make sure everyone kind of understood page 1 on that. What else did you have to add?
Just kind of going off of that on the accountability. So other than, I guess, funding wise in the 28 agreement, I would like to see some in the 28 agreement that does state kind of, I think Terry was hitting at it, us continuing to improve EMS and accounting, holding our services accountable as well.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part? I didn't quite hear it.
Holding our services accountable as well to improving EMS and services, meeting our call volumes, whether it's the target 70%, 90%, whatever it is, holding us accountable to that as well.
Yeah.
I want to see that in the 2080 agreements,
I
guys.
think it is draft. I know we
Yeah.
talked about meeting whatever.
And we had some back and forth on what level that was. Was it 80%? Was it 70%? Like what realistically did that look like? And whether or not, and if there were, what consequences there would be if you didn't meet it. Would there be, that's it, you're done? Or would it be like, okay, that's great, you didn't hit it this time. Let's see what we can do in the next quarter or something.
Aside from the 2080 agreements, the other thing I want to bring up and kind of ask, and maybe this is floating around there and I haven't seen it, but like you said, if you guys are gone in 10 years, if the advisory council is gone in 10 years and it's all new people, I would like to still hold that group accountable to making sure these funds get distributed fairly and evenly. So I don't know if there's bylaws for the advisory council or the director, whoever is in charge of approving these funds being distributed. I'd like bylaws in place that hold them accountable to the taxpayers of those districts where those funds are coming from. So I haven't seen anything like that. I don't know if that exists yet.
Is that like inherent in the,
I mean, you've got contracts with each individual entity, which the idea is to all at the same time, because we have the same number of entities, so they're all going to be somewhat similar with modifications. Ones. At least that's what I've been asked to prepare. It's all subject to what the Board of Supervisors wants to do, obviously. Well, just that there'd be a 2080, so you're going to be held by the 2080. It's a contract with the county, and if you violate it, or the Board of Supervisors determines something violates the statute, and sorry, we can't pay for that because that's clearly a fire only or something, you know, fire hoses, okay, that somehow got in this, we can't pay that, we're going to reject that claim. I guess I don't know what we need in terms of bylaws in addition to that.
So the 2080 agreement that expires in 15 years, when this taxation goes away, reevaluated at that time. That seems like a pretty simple solution, right?
Well, yeah, it is. I think, I can't remember if we put it in there that it's for a 15-year term or it's for 1-year terms reviewed annually, auto renewing unless there's a problem where somebody hasn't met criteria. Like you only responded to 30% of calls, call volume, you're expected to respond. So at the end of that term, poof, you know, your 2080 is going to be terminated. But aside from that, I think I'm presuming we put in there it would auto renew for the 15-year term, but I can't remember. I wrote it a while ago and I haven't looked at that portion of it recently.
Accordingly with that,
come on down.
at 70%, we're not just gonna shut the first responder unit or whatever down. We were gonna have a 6-month probation period and be interactive with that department or with that non-transport or transport, that what can we do to help boost you or get you back going? We're not just gonna cut them off. We're gonna work with them and see what we can do to help them, because we need them on the team going forward. And so the talk was a 6-month probation period. We'll help them as much as they can, but if it's just not feasible, then they're.
I don't remember if that was something we talked about and I built into the agreement or not, the 6-month probation. Yeah, I mean, I have it in my phone, but
So I think,
was that in there? Is that in there though, a 6-month probationary period? Do you remember?
I think more what Ryan's getting at there is, so like our board here,
Yeah.
the other boards and commissions that we have throughout the county all have sets of bylaws. They have presiding officers. They have their own checks and balances within each of their commission. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, like what we're looking for here is like, what is the checks and balances within that commission? What is their role? Kind of like what the EMA is, conservation. It's more, not so much like 2080 every department, but like within that sub entity in the county of EMS, what are the bylaws, the structure, who's presiding officers, who does, what is the term of service? How does that look like? And I think that's more, and I don't know if we have them or don't. But I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, right? I think that's kind of what you're getting at is, how do we talk about the accountability piece, and we want also not only us and the departments to be accountable, but what do we hold others accountable to at the same time, not just financially, but what is the makeup of that commission? How do we determine that? Is it annually? Is it every, and I think maybe you can say, I mean, that's kind of what I took out of what you said there. It's less about the 2080 and more about holistically, what does that commission's bylaws look like, and what is their ultimate function within this, kind of within the county organization, if you will.
Now it's your turn, Ryan. I am
Everybody wanna
I'm the
just stand right
microphone
there?
police. I apologize, but it's necessary.
Yeah, pretty much nailed it. I won't sugarcoat it. My concern comes from when we all started this, there was a lot of animosity in the county. I think we all felt it. We worked through it pretty good. My concern and worry, I think other people still are. Let's say that commission or committee gets overturned or Dan moves up to Vincent. Well, now he's more or less representing Vincent, not Dayton, Harcourt, the southern half of the county. What happens if we don't have representative in the southern half of the county on that committee? So that's my concern.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
I guess one of the things that, and I know I've talked to a few folks about it, kind of my thought, and Darren, you had hit on it a little bit, like with big expenses, like who owns what out of this? So one of the things that I looked at is like operationally, I don't have 2080s yet between all of the agencies, who's covering what areas. I mean, the financial side, financial piece aside from that, like who's covering what, who's going where? Because ideally, we've narrowed it down to we've got these certain departments doing certain activities, and we don't even have the operational piece yet. So what I guess my take on it, I've expressed my views with a few folks that have asked me, and is, we would come up with a 2080 because within the vote, we promised the people of Webster County, we would provide a specific service of EMS. So for example, last fall or whenever we had that meeting in Fort Dodge, the statement was at some point, if we don't do something, Fort Dodge is not going to be able to continue to cover certain areas. If I don't have even an operational agreement, I still don't have any promise of a continued service. And so if I can get if I can get even just an operational financial piece aside, if I can get an operational 2080 that says Fort Dodge will go execute this agreement, provide EMS service for this part of the county, or however that needs to look. I'm not a 2080 expert out of this, but they would go do that. When I was talking about the budget, then we would come through and have somebody, Dylan, I'm glad you're standing there because I've used you for an example about 1,000 times on this. When I've talked to people, it would be set up similar to how our EMA is set up. They've got their commission. He puts together his budget, presents that budget. This is what we promised the voters we're going to go execute on. We know that we're going to allocate, say we've got 10 non-transports, we're going to allocate $100,000 to the non-transport agencies. That coordinator then would line item, like when I'm talking about line item that county budget out, they're going to go through, we're going to get all of the accounts set up, the funds set up, similar to what Dylan does with EMA. We'll get all that stuff set up, work with all of the agencies, understand what everybody's needs are. So kind of like what we talked about earlier, where I said, maybe this year for some reason, you may not need to spend 10 grand. I'm just hypothetically, so just take it for a grain of salt. And I say, hey, I'm going to plan on putting one guy through EMT school, and that's all I plan on doing. Maybe $1,000 for miscellaneous expenses. So I might only need $6,000, just hypothetically throwing stuff out there. So, okay, well, I'm going to kind of budget that. Now I can shift where you need a Lucas. Hey, I'm going to work with some of the other departments. Is what you need realistic? Are we just taking more, and can we allocate this direction? I'm not saying we have to, but then for things like our big expenses, we would come back and do, because that the other big heartburn out of that, as Darren pointed to, is how do I do a building? If I distribute that county money, it's still the county money, regardless of whether I put it in your account or it stays in ours. It's still the county's money. So it's the county own that building. I personally would not like to see the county take on more buildings. I would like to see it, if you guys want to build something, somebody else takes it on. So my thought would be is that we get that budget set up. We're going to know Fort Dodge needs 700,000. Again, I don't have the numbers or anything in front of me, so that don't quote that anywhere. But say, for example, they need 700,000 for their building. They would come back and say, hey, in order for us to execute our 2080 that we promised the voters of Webster County, I need this 700,000 to put up this building. So now we can draft up a contract that would have something like a clawback, that if in 5 years Fort Dodge turns it in the new city garage, hey, by the way, you're going to have to pay this money back because you're not using it for what you said you were. But now we can contract out and set kind of that stipulation of here's what we expect, where we expect this money to go, what it's expected to be used for, and then if it's not, how we expect it to get it back. And so in my eyes, then that way I can take, I've got the operational piece. I know who's covering what, where it's going. We've got agreements for it. Now I can execute on that agreement by saying, I need these expenses that are incurred as part of that. And we can go allocate, the city can come and say, hey, we already know we budgeted for this because the coordinator put it in our budget. We've line itemed it out. We already expect that expense to come in. So we can start planning accordingly that as the money comes in, we do the bid letting and all the, Doreen and I talked a little bit about it the other day, and there's all these other checks and balances. I look at it just from up here. They know the down and dirty with it. But then we follow that process. We do the big expenditures, and then that building is whoever, in my eyes, whoever we contract then to distribute that money to based on the execution of that 2080 agreement that they would have. Because as I've talked with others before, say 10 years from now, EMS might look different. Say for some reason we have a huge boom in the southern part of the county and we need to, allocate 700,000 down there for something. It's going to have to come from somewhere else. The budget that we line itemed out is great for covering like the next 2, maybe 3 years, but this thing runs for 15 years. We have to try to forecast, to me, that's where that coordinator comes in. They help budget, they forecast what is the status of EMS, where's our biggest needs are, and then we can make that a fluid piece that continues through the duration of EMS Essential. That, in my eyes, that should help distribute funds easier. We have somebody that helps oversee it, provides the accountability, similar to how Dylan runs it with EMA, makes it easier for the departments to do it. And then if we have big expenditures, we would work with Darren and those departments and their coordinator or whatever that is. And then we would draft up a contract, come in here and say, hey, kind of like what we did with, something like the pavilion with the city. Here's our contract. Here's what we expect to have done. And then we can go execute on it. I know it's really like high level. I'm not the legalese part of that, but to me, it follows similar, Terry, to what you were putting out there. Like there's the accountability piece, and we can still make sure everybody gets allocated what they want and not even necessarily what they want, what is needed to provide that EMS service. Because at the high level, the thing that we promise the voters is EMS service, and we would cover that. And so I think we can do that. It's just, we have to do these steps. And I think there's ways to get there. But I think to me, one of the first things that I would have to have and to understand before I give money out anywhere is we have to know, like, what's the operational promise that you're giving the voters of the county, because that's what they expected out of it. So then once we know that we have that agreement with an agency, it makes it a lot easier to try to work out the financials, because we already know there's a promise to do a service and we can hold somebody accountable to doing that service. Sorry, I got really long-winded there.
A lot of words.
Lots of, sorry.
Dylan, you have been waiting so patiently.
I will try not to talk as long as Austin.
Good luck.
Dylan Hagan, Emergency Management Coordinator, and I'm also the Service Director for Otho. One of the things that I think we should be looking at before we divvy out any money is a needs assessment of what departments actually need, because Calendar said they need a Lucas device, but they can't afford it. So how is that doing the citizens of Calendar any good if they can't afford their equipment? So maybe the first year of this money, we fulfill the needs that these departments have. I can tell you from Otho EMS that we've been transporting since January. We've used a lot of grant funds and a lot of our fire department funds to buy equipment that we need. And I think it's important that they're getting the equipment that they need, because if they don't have it, they can't provide the service that they're supposed to be providing to their communities. So rather than give all the departments the $10,000 that first year, you look at a needs assessment. You need a Lucas. Okay, we need 6 Lucases in the county. Maybe you can get a discount for buying multiple Lucas devices. Sure that they have all the proper equipment that they need, rather than shortfalling those departments with, by a few $1,000s. Secondly, either way, however the funds are distributed, for the city of Otho, Our fire department is actually a city-owned fire department, so we don't have a fire board. So when we buy supplies for our ambulance service, we're actually turning in invoices to the city. So it's very similar to what I do for the Board of Supervisors is I purchase the equipment that we need for our ambulance service, and I submit a claim to the city of Otho to pay that out of our fire department budget. We have accounts with the companies that we buy our equipment from. So this is what happens when you have evening meetings. So.
Okay. Hi.
So I wouldn't say it's not possible. For our department, we're doing that already. And it's working for us. It may not work for everybody, but just a different perspective from a different service. That's how we have to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just so everybody's aware that there's been a few conversations that I think Otho's been left out of. We are a transport service. We've been a transport service since last July. We started transporting in January. And we have covered 90% of our calls. I think there's been maybe 4 or 5 that we have not had an EMS provider for. And of those, since January, we've had 39 911 calls, and we've also covered 16 events with 30 patient contacts at just those events specifically. So we stay plenty busy. So appreciate your time and making this an evening meeting so a lot of other folks can attend.
That was Bob's suggestion. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Terry.
If we're gonna be here, I probably would have kept it during the daytime.
Just for a comment, I mean, we had Otho listed, at least from talking with them, as one of the 4 transports that would be based on an equation and not the. So I don't know what your representation is on that board, but you don't have anybody.
We have somebody from each quadrant. And then the city of Fort Dodge. Okay,
Oh, when you started at the very beginning of the process. Gotcha. But they were after the vote or before the vote. Gotcha.
Terry.
Just very quick. First off, I was the one that actually drafted the first budget. And I'm the one that put in the $10,000 for the non-transporting. And the reason is Gowrie, Otho, Dayton, and even Fort Dodge could not survive without these volunteers, these non-transporting services. Non-transporting means they have no funds coming in from a call. They only operate off their fire funds right now and donations. So all those pancake dinners, all those pork chops, that's how they survive. And a Lucas is at least 16,000. That's a lot of pancakes, guys. Nice, 19. So that's why we put that in place, is we wanted to make sure that there is value with these guys and that they continue to have the equipment they need. So that's what that was put in there for. And I myself, I mean, how many calls have we been on together? Forever, right? And same with Harcourt. We work well together. We all work well together, and nobody's here for a pissing match in any way, shape, or form. We're here to represent Webster County EMS. The other thing, when I put this budget proposal together, I assumed that we would go like the cities do. The city of Gowrie doesn't have a council meeting every time that Danielle needs to write a check. She has certain things that gets paid, like the utilities, like the wages, like all of those normal things that happen. And then if there's something special, then it gets voted in and then she pays it after that. But the bills are presented at the city council after the fact, not before the fact. And that's what I assumed we would represent, that's the way this would get handled after the fact, not before. Because I really don't know too many entities that actually do it before. And we can't have calendar being without a defibrillator because we got to wait 2 weeks to get that coming. That just, it's not going to work. We are planning, Gowrie is planning on hiring So how do you handle wages? We're going to submit it to you every 2 weeks and hope that that comes in, because if we could afford it now, we would have done it a long time ago. These funds are very important to us. We want to step up what we do in that southern part of that town, southern part of the county. And if we have to apply for it every however long, it's not going to work for us.
Terry, just to respond to that, until Doreen was talking, our former auditor, and she was talking about, hey, we want you to do this like the claim system for the county. That was not what my discussion and understanding was of kind of the framework that this board was going to propose. So what the first draft of the 2080 said was quarterly reconciliations. You tell us what you've spent, and we're going to make sure it all comply.
Yes.
So to me, that was a little jarring that that's how we started the meeting today. And I don't, I don't have a vote on it. I don't think there's anything necessarily illegal, which is how I was looking at it, with allocation and then reconciliations and approving it. I don't know whether that's what all this board wants. I can tell you, I've had discussions with some board members that don't want any money distributed until such time, as, that it be done more regularly, or that no money be distributed, we'd pay the bills. That's part of the reason why we're here talking. And I don't know if there's strong opinions on that. I think you and I talked and you thought there was more agreement on that line.
Yeah, so like my thought, sorry, let me cut you off there, but like on the wages. So, and I had talked to Darren about it. So my thought is when you hire somebody, what their wage is going to be that year.
Yeah.
So you would set up a contract with the county at the start of that next year that says, I need X for wages this year. So we would similar to how we would handle buildings and everything else. You'd have, here's the contract for the county funds that we're going to use this money to cover this wage. And there wouldn't be this having to sit and wait and do everything. We already forecasted and know, so we can start the district. And again, this is the Austin's an idiot level of, we can simplify that process where you're not coming in, every single time you need to do this. It's hey, I've already been allocated the funds for this. So I just turn it in. We already know what's already in that account. It's getting paid out of that account. And that fund would be covered because we've already budgeted and forecasted out that I know I'm going to have, say, keep it simple math, $5,000 a month in wages. That fund is going to be there. You're just going to draw off that fund then as part of the contract that you would have with the county. That was my take on it, to make the big expenditures such as employees, such as buildings, the big things. Because like I said, the one thing I don't want to see the county do personally is own a lot more buildings.
See that either.
No, and I don't want you either. I can't speak for anybody else here, but me personally, I don't want to see that. But the problem is if I don't do something like that, then effectively I own the building. And I don't really want that. And to me, that's the point of, okay, I can contract out with each department, let's say down the road, we decide we need to put a full-time person in Otho, just saying that, for example, the budget then that year would be lined out that we would then set up a contract with Otho that they have this fund allocated for their wages for that employee. And it's their money to go spend with for that. And so for those big expenses like that, I think you just contract it out. We have an operational 2080 degree, because back to kind of what I said earlier, as I'm executing on what I said operationally I would do within this county to cover this service. And so, okay, I need 80,000 this year to cover wages. Okay, here's the contract. You'd have a contract with the county, and we would say, we're going to cover this wage out of this account, or however Darren can help legalese all that up. And then that way there isn't this, trying to fight for making sure we pay somebody every couple weeks. That's my take on it. It's a dumbed down, simplified version of it, obviously, because I'm not the legalese expert or the auditor out of this. But to me, that's how I simplify that process and still keep it auditable.
So I think too, like, I can speak for Gary. This is all I can speak for. We are putting up a building. That's no big secret to anybody. It's coming along very well, mind you. But we have our own funds. We have donations. We have, when we do a run, we get paid for that. We will still have that account. That account is going to be very separate from the money that's coming in from essential service. Per what is required, plus we would want it to stay. So there is no reason we can't make our $30,000 payment out of our funds and keep it out of your funds. So then you don't own our building.
But not everybody can do that.
Not, and I
that's
agree with that,
because
but
as things
honestly,
change, let's
are you
say,
gonna put up a ambulance building with $10,000 a year? I
but
mean, realistically, the only people that might do that are gonna be the ones that transport. And they will have those funds because they can take it out of their runs. Because the EMS essential service will be coming, their wages can come out of that and some of the other stuff that they're now paying for with fire funds. So I think that it's all going to come out of one pot, but it's going to be different pots. And I think you can avoid that side of it. And it will work. I know Gary will work.
I guess part of what I'm getting at is EMS today looks a certain way.
Yeah.
In 5 years, it's going to look very different.
Yep.
So that budget, even that we proposed, is going to have to change 5 years from now because, like I said, maybe there's a huge boom in Harcourt and they've got 10,000 people there now. We hope. But that's, back to what Dylan said, we need to understand what the needs are of the county. So every year we should be looking at what are the realistic needs to cover this service? Because it might be 17,000 a calendar to make sure they get their Lucas. So they're not having to save 2 years worth of money to try to go get it. Where, hey, these folks may not need as much. We can allocate money this way because we know what the needs of the county are. Because that's going to be a very fluid difference every year because in 5 years, Dayton might need something. We have to be able to allocate the money based on the needs because that's what we said we'd do is we would go provide that EMS service throughout the county.
How do you determine what a need and a want is, though? I mean,
It's no different than what Dylan does on EMA. I mean, he understands what he needs, his checks and balances. He takes it back to his commission. And they say, hey, you may want that, but you don't probably need that. Or, yep, that's perfect. You need to get that in your budget and go do that. If you do that needs assessment at whatever interval you would do those on, I don't know how those.
I would
work,
think
right?
budgets.
I
should
did
be
law
required
enforcement, not
once a year.
EMS. So maybe it's an annual understanding what the needs are throughout the county. And then you write your budget every year based on what the needs of the county are.
Austin, we can't do that. We can't move money from her budget to my budget to his budget. That's not how this was voted on. It was voted on the tax evaluation money would stay within the district that we're responsible for.
That's true.
This would have never passed.
That's
Because
true.
everybody would have thought Terry was taking my money. I'd have thought I was taking her money. It wouldn't have passed. This
So
isn't
if there's a big need in calendar, we can't adjust a help calendar.
No,
10,000.
10,000.
No, I know that, but
You can't pull that money.
we promised a service though.
Did not promise to pull money, Austin. Not even close. That's what have never passed. Because everybody would have thought Matt was taking it all. I heard that.
And he knows that. He knows that, right,
That's why
Matt?
it's allocated by the district we're responsible for. Flat out.
So it's not based on what the needs of the county are,
No,
just,
it's based off the text.
Isn't.
It's based off her needs, my needs, his needs to service the county in a faster, more way.
So what I keep hearing is that if I live in a poor part of the county, because of how money is distributed, I should expect to get worse EMS service.
Oh, no.
On the contrary, on the
So,
contrary.
but how
because-
am I not hearing that if the money is going to be based on what the taxpayers pay? That's exactly the same as those school districts where if they're in a low income school district, their schools aren't doing well, whereas if they're in a high income school district, they're doing great.
It would only be correct if everybody transported, but not everybody does transport. Harcourt has less people than probably, well, maybe Claire might be less. I don't know.
So if I live in a
But-
poor EMS district, I should expect less.
No,
The
no.
whole reason for this was to make sure everybody got.
No, I mean, compared to the other district that has more money, I get
The
that.
idea for him to build a building out on that side of town.
Mhm.
So he can access the county and what you call the poorer districts faster and more efficient.
Correct, but you keep telling me that you're allocating the funds based on a formula that says the funds are going to go to each of those districts based on the amount of the value of. Okay, so
Yes.
then why am I not to assume that since the money is going to the district based on the value of their property, that the places that have less value to that property won't slowly over time get less quality
That
service?
was part of the reason we did the 10,000 so that all of the non-transporting services were on an even keel. The rest of that money goes to the transporting services that is servicing them.
So does
So
every
Gary will
transporting
go-
service get the exact same amount of money, or does every transporting service get an amount of money based on the value of the property that that service goes to?
So,
Yes.
so I'm the lowest on that totem pole.
Mhm.
I'm the one but we can make that work based off where we're at. That's the.
But Austin's made that work. His idea about making sure that we do a value assessment, did it without having
I
to
wouldn't take
base
that
it on
back.
property value.
So, are you trying to say that if we were to get $3 million coming in per year, just throwing that out as easy number?
Mhm.
Fort Dodge gets $1 million, Southwest Western gets $1 million, Dayton gets $1 million.
I think that we would do a needs assessment based on what, yearly, how many calls we actually get in each area and distribute the money based on what the actual needs for each area are. We do some sort of initial 28E where maybe we do base it on this formula, and then we revisit it in 3 to 5 years and go, did this actually work? And now how do we really need to distribute it?
Just coming to this meeting just now, you haven't paid attention for the last 2 years.
I have checked in.
Notch has a number of calls, a great number of calls compared to everybody else.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct. But if we lock in a 2080 now,
To where, as you're saying,
Mhm.
everybody gets the same type of.
I said it would be based on their need, based on a value assessment. I said that the needs will be based on for instance, who's getting the most actual calls. Okay. So once we've done the value assessment, that value assessment would go around and tell us Fort Dodge is where we should spend the majority of our money, and we should continue to do these value assessments so that we know year to year where we should be putting our money so that people can continue to live out in the rural Webster County.
That would never have passed.
That's, no, that's.
That was
that's
the one
100%
thing
like
we thought
percent.
when this all first come out. When we were going out to our public and telling them, they said, I don't want my money going to Fort Dodge. Nothing against Fort Dodge. But they wanted to make sure there was going to be EMS down where we are or wherever we are, Otho, Callender, everybody. And if it would have gone to Fort Dodge because they have the biggest amount of people, they have the biggest amount of calls, then it would have left the rest of us with nothing or very little of nothing.
But if they're taking care of the greatest number of our citizens, why wouldn't they need to have the largest budget
And they do.
outside of needs? Okay.
They do.
But what if we
Thank-
discover after we put these in, based on this formula, that there are other areas that need the funding moved around? Sounds to me like you put in a very rigid structure for how this money is going to be spent. What happens if we discover that, I don't know, that we have a higher rate of cancer in one part of the county of another, more heart attacks are occurring in one place or another? Like, these little health incidents can bubble up. So what do we do if we discover a different place needs the more money that we hadn't anticipated? Like, I haven't heard how we plan that outside of saying, and the value assessment would then tell us what sort of equipment they need. Why, like, it sounds like you
Found this
don't want to
be
do a
the
value
most
assessment.
fair. The other thing is, no matter where you are in the county, if you're having a heart attack, you don't care. You just want an ambulance there that will save your life. And that's what we want to provide.
Okay, and so my worry is that as funding goes out from, if you base it entirely on just the property value, that the parts of the county that don't have as high a property value over time are just going to get less quality service.
Anyway, John, that was part of the county coming up with the Essential Services Advisory Board. So that we could go through months and months and months, up to years of meetings. There's only one supervisor and that's Nikki that came on when the other one, prior to that, Nick Carlson was a supervisor. He was in the thick of all this that was going on. And see, you've got a lot of many years of EMS expertise, knowledge, understanding that put all this stuff together. And I hear Austin talk, and I understand some of that, but on the other hand, yes, it is county money. But the Essential Services Advisory Board spent countless times coming up with what we thought would cover from the northwest corner of the county to the southeast corner of the county, the whole county. That's what we can, and we don't have the time to inform each and every one of you how we come up with all this. But take my word for it, there's been a lot of information, a lot of discussion, a lot of things that put this all together. We can't, but there again, yes, it's county money, but the numbers that Dalton put together, we've been working with that through this whole thing, that how can we use that money to help this quadrant and that quadrant and these quadrants to the best of the ability? Because yeah, we know in 5 years there's going to be changes because we've been involved for 25 years. We know there's going to be changes coming and we're planning for that. The building in Goree has that plan in it because we don't know what the state's going to recommend or decide to do. Fortunately, we have this Essential Services. If it wasn't for, it was a great team effort, granted, that this got passed. But if you start, well, anyway, sit down with more of us and we'll discuss more detail. It's hard to do it now, how we came up with this and how we're going to provide every corner of the county to the best of our ability to a response time. We don't have the ability to do that now, but if the people in these areas, basically we told them that that money would stay in those areas to help with the EMS service. And we had the numbers and the statistics to show it was going to help and it was going to encourage and hopefully motivate people to come together. All the services, there's a 280th Street North is Fort Dodge, but boy, if they need help over that, Southwest Webster's going to go, or Dayton's going to go, Farmville, if they, and that's part of the coordinator administrator to get everybody trained on the same page, to have all the equipment the same. I'm running out of time. I know.
No, you're right. I just wanted to.
I thought you were yawning.
No, I was.
Well,
I was
Sorry,
switching, but
Nikki.
I wanted to make a point. The structure of the advisory council is such that every single area of the county is represented by somebody who lives there. I am not worried at all about less service being in any of the poorer areas or less populated areas because you folks live there. It's your area. It's your neighbors. These are the people that you see on a day-to-day basis when you're walking down the street or you're going to get coffee at the local shop. That is the thing that I am worried the least about here, because you all have been taking care of your areas and your neighbors and your folks for years. And that is the one thing when I talk about accountability and sustainability that I don't worry about, is that.
Don't get me wrong, but it's like you don't, the number side of things that we know we can work with that are coming, like the 10,000, basically that's coming out of, off the top, but it's the same thing for every area. Matt's got north of 280. So when we took all that money off the top for each first response or non-transport, that's money that's from that territory anyway. Gary's not paying for any of the non-transports north of 280. Gary's, our area is paying for those, the way calculations worked out, and Dan is with the Dayton one. So we're basically covering our areas to the best of our abilities. And when I start to hear that the county's going to control all that now and determine, well, I think they need it and these guys don't, or we'll use it over there. We passed it that these areas are going to use that to build up those areas with the EMS service. So.
Because I don't know if it's exactly what John was saying, but some of what he was saying, I know it kind of got a bad reaction. The voters never would have voted for it, what have you. But I can understand the concept that we've got 4 transport areas and they may not all be equal. I mean, maybe I don't know what the tools are. You guys know better than me, but I could see what Dylan was saying about doing a needs assessment, like for year one. Okay, because Dayton's got a 15-year-old ambulance and doesn't have a Lucas device. Okay, well, that's not great for that quadrant. That's not the facts, but that's not great for that quadrant. So, and maybe these other places have some newer things. So maybe in year one, you kind of have to look, say, make sure the level of service from those four can provide a similar level of service. That's how I interpreted a needs assessment. Maybe these guys are running, on a bicycle and, they don't have what they need. And these other people are driving a Cadillac. So I can understand that basic concept that maybe you want to look initially, make sure you can get the same level of service from each of those four transports and that you're getting similar coverage areas for your people. Not that we're going to give all the money to Fort Dodge. It sounds to me like would most likely be pulling money from Fort Dodge to give to the more rural areas to make sure they're on an even keel and can provide the same level of service Fort Dodge does, who doesn't have a money constraint, unlike a rural area. So I don't know that what he was saying was quite as contentious as it needed to be. And maybe you don't want a needs assessment in year one before you break into more of a formula. But I think it's a valid discussion to make sure everybody has the same level of support and equipment to provide the services they need to actually meet those needs that are going to be put on them from this.
Well, and
That's how I was-
let's not forget that just because I live in Fort Dodge and I pay for Fort Dodge, right? That doesn't mean if I'm in Gallery, they're going to be like, w- w- you're like, oh, it's her.
So in,
Well, and that's-
And it's citizens, it's people, it's taxpayers, and it's people who visit us as well. We're taking care of everybody.
And so I look at it and I go, I think we kind of did that. I mean, that the whole reason we set this budget up is because we knew what the needs of the county were. But I guess what I'm getting at is in 5 years, are those needs going to be the exact same as they were this year? And I guess that's the only part that I'm trying to get is as we look forward. Because remember, this thing runs for the next 15 years. It's not just this year. It's not just next year. It's 15 years. So in the future, that's kind of why, like I brought up your example. We might find that calendar has a huge need and all of a sudden they need something. We should probably align our budget then and change it to where our needs are. We did that now. That's how we're getting this started. We found the biggest need. We saw where, we did the mapping. We did all of whatever we did there. I was in all the conversation or most of them. And I've talked to most of you guys. I mean, I've spent probably 5 hours on the phone over the last 7 days on this topic only, amongst the other things. And I guess what I'm saying is when I look forward, the needs might change. I'm not saying go rework the math right now, because I think we got to the numbers we did because we did the math. We saw what the needs were, but then going forward, and maybe like you said, like Darren said, we don't look at that. Maybe we've already established we know what the needs are. That's why we made our budget the way we did. I look more at let's get that operational piece in. Let's understand our big expenses and how we can get that out there and get that money out there quickly, efficiently, and auditability. And then down the road, because I'm looking more at in 10 years, is it going to be the same as today? Probably not. There's going to be needs that might be different. There might be a department that has a huge need for another defibrillator. There might be another Lucas device that's needed. Are we really going to wait 2 years to fulfill that need down the road? Or are we going to balance our budget around in such a way that we fulfill that? And I guess that's kind of what I was getting at is long-term, since this sunsets in 15 years, how do I, when we look at, the boards that come in after us, how are we going to say, okay, this is how we're ensuring the service? Because, we passed that we would provide this service, and how do we continue that level of service for everybody? Because like I said, from being a part of the conversations over the last 2 years, I know the amount of work that you guys have all put in to this. I mean, I just look at the amount of time I put in even in the last 5 days, knowing how much work went in the 2 years prior to that. So I think we've looked at that, we've assessed that, and that's how we came up with the budget that we did, that we proposed. And I guess what I'm saying when I look at that is in 5 years, is that budget going to look exactly the same? Because no different than like a fire budget. I mean, that's going to, and I haven't looked at your guys' budget, but you probably change that every year based on your needs, what you need to go do. Then I'm just saying from a long-term viability standpoint, that's how we would look at that, is as the needs of the county change, we would assess where our needs are at. And that's where, to your guys' point, to me, that's where a coordinator, director, or whatever you want to call that person, where they sit in there and their job then is to spend 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, making sure that you know what's going on, that they've talked to you about what your needs are. We know what Otho's needs are. We know what Gallery needs. We know what Dayton needs. We know what Fort Dodge needs. Their only job is to make EMS function in Webster County. And I think in the short term, what we need to figure out is how does the funding move? How do we make sure that that funding gets to the places it needs to be as quickly as it needs to be, but also have the same transparency and auditability that we have to have in the county, because that's also what the taxpayers expected when they opted to give us that money.
Aaron, I have a legal question. This board deviate from how it was presented to the public to be voted on?
What the language of I don't know everything that was represented to the public by various people, but they're bound by what the language was of what the ballot measure was that was passed.
Okay, so that would take away those thought processes. Now, in 15 years, if you want to do an assessment, that's fine. But this 15 years, that was voted on by the public to leave that money in those areas. You pooling the money would have never passed this, Austin.
So let me ask you this then, was that budget on the ballot when you voted? I'm not saying to go change the budget. I think there's a
You're
little,
saying to change the wording.
no, I'm saying that we drafted a budget as a presentation of how we expect this to work based on the needs.
Based on tax evaluation for the district, not the needs. It's tax evaluation per district.
So then I guess we need to go back and look at what the language was in what the voters passed. Because I guess what I'm getting at is, did we say we're only going to spend $5,000 on gauze through the entire county? Was that on the ballot?
Austin, come on.
No, I know, but that's what I'm getting at though. We passed that EMS would be an essential service.
Can I make a comment here? The first that I've really heard much of what was going on with this, and yeah, I was very much in support of making sure that resolution got passed and trying to get the best medical teams out there that we can. One of the issues I have just listening today is calendar needs a Lucas, $19,000. That should be one of our main priorities. You need a defibrillator. That should be one of our main priorities. All these things we need to get going first before we think about anything else. Then we got to make sure we have the manpower we need the manpower, we need the training, we've got to get all this together. And so far, all we've been talking about tonight is who gets what. Well, that's not helping out our medical situations that we could have anywhere in Webster County. We have got to start sitting back there and start looking at it. My idea, I would say probably 10 days, 2 weeks ago, was we've supplied what we need for our first responders, which is the volunteer firemen, and then pay them $250 for every run they go on. And my reason for the $250 was, if I pay you $250 for a run, you have fulfilled what I wanted you to do under the emergency medical. What you do with that money after that, that's if you need a new fire hose in Harcourt, then by golly, you can use that money for that, because you've already responded and took care of everything I needed you to do on that call. And my suggestion was submitting that bill every month. If you had 6 runs, it's $1,500 a month. We would send a check to those volunteer fire departments. You put it in your funds, and we don't have to worry about that part at all. Is 80,000 going to cover it? Not with all the other stuff we made. And I don't expect you to drive your trucks, but I do expect somebody to respond from their house. We need jump bags to get going. I'd be willing to go out of my way to do that. In fact, I even told Matt Price that I would be willing to even bond to make sure we got the equipment we needed and the stuff that we needed, because we know we've got money coming in to try to get this stuff done. I think the priority is making damn sure that we can take care of any medical situation that we can, and that is what our goal is. But from listening what's going back and forth here, it just seems like the almighty dollar is the only thing we're looking at, where I think other people, and especially me on this board, want to make sure we get the best bang out of the buck and make sure we can deal with what we've got to deal with. Whether that's putting a new fire station out on 169 so they can get anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes better time heading down with a paramedic until we can get your paramedic programs going in the small towns. We've got to start working more as a team. And understand, I have seen no budgets whatsoever. I've been told that this is the direction we're going with this money, and I've not seen anything else in front of me. Nothing. I haven't seen a budget. I've seen a division, but I haven't seen a budget. Work with us, get us the information we need so we can make a good decision. That hasn't been happening here. I have not seen anything for me to make a decision, so I have to come up with these ideas on trying to make things better here. But if he needs a Lucas machine, that should be one of the first things. Defibrillators and manpower. That should be a main priority. Because I don't care how pretty your ambulance garage looks or how pretty those ambulances are. If you don't have anybody in to run them, we've just defeated our whole purpose. And I've seen nothing very much when it comes to the training part. Well, I haven't seen a budget from anybody. So what do you want us to do?
Haven't gotten that far. That's why it's not all about the money, Bob. It's about how to serve the community. Now you're using EMA for an example. What was EMA department started by a vote of the citizens of this county? No, it was something that grew out of a need that the county had that the supervisors supported. This is a whole different entity. This was voted on. Essential services was passed in the state a few years ago. Now Webster County has passed it. Now that you can't compare apples to apples there because they're two different sources. It's not, we have to look at this EMS essential services property tax as not another fund that the Webster County Supervisors has to distribute like they do EMA. You distribute it like the plan that we originally came up with and set up with. We will have budgets, we will have these things, but we're wondering what we're going to have. We thought, we understood that it was the way it was all set up according to property taxes, and we could work with those numbers to help increase the EMS care in that area. Yeah, there's fire departments, there's things that need other assistance, but now you're pulling it out of our advisory board, the Webster County EMS Advisory Board that you guys put together. I don't know for sure why you wanted it. Because all this stuff, all these times, all these people that have put all this together for the best, for the response time for the people, it's not about the money. The money helps provide what we need. But a lot of these volunteer services have just been volunteering out of the goodness of their heart and serving their communities. It's not about the money. Partly is, yes, but how to distribute it. It's not an EMA. It's an EMS essential services that is not basically county supervisors. With all due respect, we've got things set up. You just haven't. And basically our first item we put together and had the website had all kinds of this stuff in there. But did I get any phone calls from any of the supervisors? What's this, Dan? What's that, Dan? Our names were on that information that we sent out. I never got a call. Not one from any of you. Now we're trying to inform you to make the best decision. We're all in this together. We don't want to divide. We want to bring whatever service, whatever first responders, non-transport for the well-being of the entire county. And the last thing we wanted to do was get lost in the weeds on how the money should spend or do it here, what's there. I appreciate the fact, Bob, that you got a heart for EMS, you do. So do we. And we've been in it a long time. And I just wish that you would, well, I guess I've said enough, but I hope I got my point across that we're not, just look at EMS and what we've done, not we, the team has done for this area, for this county to be productive. I talked to a doctor the other day, called me. And she said there's great opportunity for Webster County in the EMS area to with this essential services of the past and with all that volunteer, I don't know what the other counties are like, but there's so many departments and so many people that have volunteered to do this, not career, not paid. We're hoping to change some of that, but take our advice on some of this. I would hope so, because we've spent a lot of time trying to come up with what's best for the citizenry of Webster County EMS service. So Yeah.
Dan, I do appreciate the work everybody in here has done. But I think the one thing that some folks may have forgotten is when it's all said and done, we're the ones that are responsible. Now, let me finish. Darren turns around and says that we're the ones that are going to be accountable. It's not that I'm attacking anybody here. I want to make sure that whatever we decide to do, we're good with. So when I question things, it's because, well, right now I'm pretty ignorant about everything because very little have I seen come across my desk. And like you and I had that conversation, right here is what I got. I've gotten more tonight than I have in 2 years. So when we're being ignorant about this, it's us not knowing what's going on. And yeah, you might have posted a lot of things, but believe it or not, I've got a lot more things than,
I know that. We discussed.
so that's why I'm really, excuse me? There was
Carlson.
Carlson and then me when, as of January. Yeah. Mhm.
And I would say prior to right now, and maybe I'm wrong, Nikki or Darren, if you have an answer, but I don't think the real discussion has ever been had of, we know what we expect the money to go do. I don't know that anybody's dug into, and maybe somebody on the board can tell me, were those questions brought up prior to this, of this very conversation? Did it get brought up prior to even to the vote? So that we wouldn't be hashing this out. I mean, I think we had the budget, we kind of knew what we expected it to look like. And that's why I say, like, when I say, I think the needs assessment, what we're looking at, that's what was done as part of our advisory council. That's what they did. That's why they came out with the preliminary budget that they had. What I'm getting at though is where the conversations had of how does money get distributed. And I don't know that was that specific. What we're doing tonight, I don't think got brought up till now. And I was talking to Supervisor Conrad the other day that this is probably a conversation that should have been had right after the vote was done, so that we could hash, like, hindsight being 2020, myself included, all should have sat down and said, okay, what does this actually need to look like to execute on this plan? Because we had the plan, we knew what we want the money to do, we knew where it needed to go, how it needed to happen. That's what that whole thing was done for. But what we didn't get into was, after that vote happened, how does that actually play out in real life? And I don't know I've never heard it, so I'm kind of making my own assumptions, is we knew the plan we had, then we've got to figure out, if it passes, then how do we execute on it? The biggest thing was, how do we actually come up with a plan that is actionable to the public versus trying to dig into the weeds when we haven't even passed it yet. So my hindsight 2020, we probably should have had this meeting back in March, so that, hey, now we know this money is, we know what this plan is, and here's what the expectations are from the auditor's office. Here's what the rest of the board needs. How do we make this actionable?
Actually, Austin, this meeting should have taken place 2 years ago. On the financial side of things, we were doing the logistics side of things. How could you get coverage, where you need to go, what would it take? Then we use the example of the fire board, the property taxes that go to the fire board, to the township trustees, and how they disperse that. That's how we were anticipating this was going. So you back up a couple more years and say, it would have put a different perspective on what we're trying to do now. If you guys would have put your perspective in at that time, I know you had a representative on the board.
Well, but I mean, how spending an entire meeting just talking about how the funds transfer prior to even knowing it's there, how value added is that to the conversation?
Okay,
But it's,
let me provide a little clarity. The vote happened, what, March? Something? Okay. The meeting after the vote passed, we had this conversation. We didn't get into the weeds, but it was very much, am I wrong? It was very much a, hey, we're going to get a check. And then I put the brakes on it and said, whoa, we need accountability. And that's when we started working. The point of the advisory council is to advise. So what we did from there, like Mr. Driscoll said earlier, was started to put together what we thought we would advise for a 28E and a plan. And at that point, I, at one point, distributed a draft of a draft. Basically, it was a draft of the 28E, and then the city council or the city manager of Fort Dodge came back and had some adjustments. And I went, whoa, and sent it to this board. So that is the process from which it went from vote to advisory council to 2080 to this board. And at that point, it became very clear that there were very conflicting ideas on this table from what was given and promised to the voters throughout all of the town halls, throughout all of the information that was gathered. And so at that point, it was, let's put a workshop together because clearly there's a big disconnect. I don't want to take too much longer because it's going to be 2.5 hours here, but I wanted to mention, I just wanted to read so everyone is crystal clear on what the public measure vote said. Shall the following public measure A be adopted? Shall the Board of Supervisors in the County of Webster, State of Iowa, for the purpose of supporting emergency medical services in the county pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 422D, be authorized for a period of 15 years to levy and impose an emergency medical services tax to levy the annual amount not exceeding $0.75 per $1,000 of assessed valuation on the taxable property within the county. So I think there's a lot of, we voted on this, those are the actual words that were voted on. Wanted to say a couple other things quickly. Terry, I just wanted to thank you for kicking us off and giving us a good base to go off from. I appreciate that. Luke Huggins, who I think may still be on the call, but if he's not, he said his phone was about dead. He said his suggestion is to task the EMS Advisory Council, which are representative of the various parts of the county, Fort Dodge and Dr. Sokol, appointed by supervisors, to provide final guidance to the supervisors based on this feedback, then have the supervisors vote on final direction to 28Es to propose to impacted agencies. So I just wanted to make sure that his voice was represented as well. And another thing that lives in the back of my head is, let's face it, this is kind of a new thing for the state, and in a couple of years, they're probably going to try to take it over anyway. But all we can do right now is try to make it the best that we can for the citizens, for the taxpayers, for the visitors, and for all of us sitting here. As far as pancake breakfasts, I really hope to be invited to all of those because I'd really like to go to them. They're fun. Is there anything else? I know we're kind of talking in circles now. I'd like to get out of here by 8:30, but just wanted to say those things quickly.
Okay, Crystal Lloyd, Webster County Budget and Finance Director. Doreen and I kind of spoke on her way out the door. Both of us were kind of thinking as we were talking here. I know there was a lot of issues with the whole claims process and everything. I personally would like to see with our system and with what the state auditors want, something drafted up for different accounts. Okay, that's on our side. Okay. However, I don't see why, and I do want to discuss with other counties as well with Shauna and work with more with this, why we could not do a quarterly report or a semi-annual report and have the funds worked around that too. And that way they're only reporting 2 times a year. There shouldn't be an issue with that. Again, I want to work with other counties, see what they're doing, kind of work with our system, work with our state auditors, do all of that. So I know there was a huge problem with the claims cycle and every 2 weeks, but take a breath. We'll get this all squared away. Again, new. Let's work with other counties and figure this out.
I would appreciate if you take the lead on that.
We'll do.
Sir, you were going to come up.
Oh.
You want to add on to that?
Yes, I do. I guess me and Crystal coming into this new, more or less. We want to know what you guys what our homework would be to move forward. Cause I came into this, and I didn't really know a ton about it. I mean, it was, oh, let's vote. Okay. Oh, it passed. And then
Yep.
before, when Dina was here, I'm like, so what's our next step? And she's like, I don't know.
I think Crystal put out a good plan, and I think if you could take the lead that and just make sure that Shauna's involved throughout that. Sir.
I'm Scott Kuster.
Hi.
I've got 50 years in public safety, law enforcement, fire, EMS. Presently, I'm employed by the Department of Public Safety with the Fire Service Training Bureau. What I want to talk about, Supervisor Throw brought up the great idea. I want to take a poll. Harcourt, how many EMTs do you have? 3? Who else we got here? Claire? None. Any other department represented? Yeah,
Calendars got 2 EMTs and 1 EMR.
okay. AI?
Yeah, one.
1. Could you use more EMTs?
Yes.
Definitely. That's why I thought I voted for was to get equipment to these smaller departments and get personnel trained to respond to these calls. Because it doesn't do any good if we don't have anybody in Harcourt that's trained to EMT waiting on somebody coming from Dayton or Gowrie. And I think this money should be spent to look at that first for equipment needs and then personnel. So that's my opinion on this, but I thought that's where this money was going to go. So.
Comment on that. My thought about the equipment first instead of the manpower is that we need the equipment for the people we have. Then let's get some more paramedics and EMTs set up for the rest of the county. We got to get it done.
It's like fire, no good. You can't put a fire out without hose, can you? Or water.
More difficult.
Yeah.
You may
So
do it.
I really think we're all on the same page. I think we all want the same goals. And I know that everybody on this board is willing to work as a team to try to get this thing going, but let's try to get it going a lot sooner than later. And I'm available almost any time except when I go see the grandbaby to meet with any of you to try to be successful here. Okay?
Also, all of you in this entire room are invited to come to EMS Advisory Council meetings. They are public meetings. They're usually held in the evenings. And you're all invited to come to learn more information. I believe the list of folks who's on that council is publicly available. You're able to contact any one of us at any time to ask any questions that you would have. Come on down, Ryan. You got 3 minutes.
Well, it sounds like a lot of us are getting hung up on the specific dollar amount. Maybe I was wrong, but I assumed when we advertised all this, that was just a rough number. Obviously, if property values in Harcourt go down, I don't expect to keep getting 10,000. I don't think it'd be fair if Gowrie or Dayton got the same amount if their property values continue to decrease. If they increase, they should get more money. So I have no problem if this all said and done comes out, Harcourt only gets 9,500. That's not that big of a deal to me. What I will add is there is now, with the essential service being passed and the duty to act or duty to respond, I do generally believe that there is a requirement of now this funds to pay for part of our operational expenses. So after that operational expenses is done, and I can say from Harcourt, it's maybe from like 7 to 10,000 for that. I have no problem with the need for assessment on, what capital expenses should be spent to calendar to get a Lucas or Lehigh to get one or whatever else is needed. But there is that requirement now that essential service has to pay for that, in my opinion, those operations. I mean, that the whole point of this was to no longer subsidize EMS with fire funds. So going forward, I don't plan on spending fire funds on EMS services anymore. And part of that's going to be, again, 75% of our fixed costs like vehicle maintenance or utilities, work comp, stuff like that. So beyond that, I would like to see a need for assessment like what Dylan suggested and see where that money needs to go to. Because I agree, I think the county's gonna look very different in 10 years. Harcourt might not have its doors open in 10 years. I don't know. But if that's the case, Harcourt shouldn't be getting $10,000 still. It should go to somewhere that's needed. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's where if we get that detailed budget and have in our county system and where all that needs to go, we can, it's not hard to do that. I think it's going to take somebody some time to sit down with the auditor, with budget finance director to get those accounts created and coded and so that we know where all of that money is. And it's one of those that takes time and somebody's effort to go execute on. And to your point, I mean, that's what we said we were going to go do. We just now have to put it into that because right now we have one item that says EMS.
An arbitrary deadline.
Yeah.
Matt Nonson, Service Area 7, EMS Coordinator, also on Gary's crew. Calendar needs a Lucas. For this year, the EMS for Webster County has funds. Last year, we put part of those funds together to get a Lucas for Otho. So there's money out there that they don't need all 19,000 to get the Lucas that we can get with the state. But the thing is we've got to show the state that it's a need. You know, Harcourt has a Lucas. Calendar doesn't. I went on a call, unresponsive. They didn't have a Lucas to put on. So we had to throw it on when we got there. Well, we're coming from Gary to Calendar, even going as fast as we can. And the thing is if Gary gets paramedics in, paramedics has drug totes as he left. Chief Price would tell you that has to be locked up. So then you have to redo the ambulance to lock it up somehow because you don't want me going in the drug cart, you know, because I'm not trained on that. So having to do this is going to take us all a lot of discussions. So thank you all for inviting us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Barb, you've been uncharacteristically quiet. Okay. Marty, I could say the same for you. Nothing?
If Marty hasn't spoken, you just keep on moving.
All right. All right. Okay. So, just to recap, there's a lot of stuff that we need to determine. Crystal and Shauna will be tasked with making sure, trying to see, with the, state auditor and such, what a budget could look like with checks and balances that are maybe a little less stringent than an every 2 week cycle. We'll work with Darren to kind of try to tweak some of the 28E agreements or language. Just the drafts. I think we all can agree that we didn't like the city's draft. And then we'll just continue to have these conversations. You all are obviously welcome to any of our board meetings and also the advisory council meetings as well. And then those of us who are on that council, I'm sure I've taken a bunch of notes. If you have anything that you wanted to really like bullet point for any of us on the council, you can send that information to me via email. That way I have all those bullet points when we have our next meeting and we can kind of go step by step and address each of those and discuss each of those, if that's cool. My email address is on the Webster County website, but it's basically nikki.conrad@webstercountyia.gov. And that way we'll have one place where we can knock down the list of, they were worried about this, they're, worried about this, and we can knock off some of those and get some answers or potentially look for some more solutions. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Marty asked for that a couple months ago. So I started doing that, but we haven't had any meetings since then because we're kind of on a hold. So yes, I will make sure that all of you, if I have your email addresses, we'll get you on that. Great.
And then second question would be the 2080 agreements and those start coming out. Can you contact the EMS agencies?
Well,
Records of those also, so we have a clue what's going on
Well,
because.
generally the way it would work is like Essential Services Board asked me to put something together. I put together a draft, then I sent it to Nikki, who's on that committee. And then however she's going to distribute it for the next meeting to look at or whatever as a draft. But
So you sent it to her through that meeting and we can get it there.
yeah, if she, I mean, if she,
Yeah. Oh, now she talks.
No, I just want to make sure
Yes.
that us as the regular.
I don't have the list of everybody, but she does.
Because
Yes.
For city council, we're not run by the city.
Yep.
Our district, the board of, or the board, whatever you call it. They're like, they expect me to take care of this stuff, but if you're.
So, yep. So usually with the agenda, I'll put down, basic stuff that we have to do. And then, what we've been putting down is just discussion on 28E agreements. And so I typically, if I recall, will add those to that packet. It's just a couple sheets that go out with the agenda. So I'll make sure to do that when I send them out next time too. She does. And I'm like, I sent it out last night. Check your email, Barb. Yeah, it's far before 24 hours. It's usually a good 2-3 days or so, if not more. Usually what I like to do is the second we're done with one meeting, I like to send out the agenda for the next meeting.
Do you put the, on the county website about the meetings or?
I don't know that I do, but I can send you those so that you can pop them up there.
Yeah, IT. Yep.
Oh, hey.
If it's on the website, I would rather get the email because I'm not going to be scrolling through to
Totally.
all the pages.
Yeah.
Do you have a next meeting scheduled?
Your city.
I don't think we do yet,
I'll give you
but
3 of them.
we will soon. It's kind of been on hold. Okay, is there anything super pressing that hasn't been discussed yet? Barb, you can't do that. If there is no further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All for the cause. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.